And here we are in another episode of the Spoiler Room. Yes, folks, you're getting lots of Spoiler Room because there's lots of great movies to talk about. And tonight we're going to talk about 3 movies from the past. The first 3 Mad Max films in honor of Mad Max Fury Road coming out tomorrow in many, many theaters and nationwide on Friday. And tonight I have a great group of Spoiler Room crew members in here with me. Tonight, once again, we have Mr. Cole Meredith. How are you, sir?
Terrific. Thanks for having me, man. I'm stoked about the show, for sure.
You bet, definitely. And the BFD himself has returned once again, Mr. Glenn Bittner. Hello, sir.
Call me the Night Rider. Think of me when you look at the night sky. Night Rider!
Night Rider! you just need what is it, a hot redhead on your arm, and you're all good. And driving Glenn, 100 miles an hour.
Glenn, you are a fuel-injected suicide machine, man.
Yes, you are. And then we have the Raggedy Man himself, Mr. Scott Davis. How are you, sir?
I have no name.
You have.
I'm doing okay, man.
And it is I, your host, the Mark the Toe Cutter movie man himself. And tonight we are talking the first 3 Mad Max films. So we're going to dive right into this, to the first film of the trilogy, aptly named Mad Max. Now, Mad Max is set in the near future, which I love because we never get a date. Let's start right off with this film. They don't give this film a date of how far into the future it goes, just a few years, right?
Which is
a few years from now.
Which is brilliant because I don't know why so many films. I mean, I get why the old films from like the 50s and 60s did it. You know, it was like future. Once it became clear that, oh shit, movies are going to be around for a while, I don't get why people put a year on things because it immediately dates the movie. You know, so we always have to kind of disregard when we see 1990, The Bronx Warriors, or the year at the beginning of Escape from New York, or even Thundar the Barbarian, where apparently we're like we should have had like a comet destroy us like about 21 years ago.
Yeah, man, that is a great point. Imagine watching Escape from New York without the year pasted to it.
Yeah. I mean, as long as you hear, like, a few years from now, that's all you need to know. It's like, okay, it's the future, things have gone to hell. That's all you need to know.
Well, I thought it was brilliant as well. Wouldn't you agree, Glenn? Because it doesn't, as Scott said, doesn't date the film. You could have this take place anytime from when you're watching it on, right? Kind of. Well, except for maybe the fashion and the cars, but...
Yeah. It's... I don't know. That thing's never really bothered me because of the fact that at a point, any movie's going to seem dated. Doesn't matter how, I mean, provided we don't kill ourselves off, there's going to come a point when, you know, people in, like, you know, 20, 24, 50 are going to go, man, Star Trek, were they way off? You know? So...
We haven't even found Mars yet, man, and they were way off.
I like it at times when they do it because when you look at when a film was made, it shows the kind of, you know, the thoughts of the fact that people in the 60s and 70s and even the 50s, they'd be fucking amazed we're still here. You know, I'm thinking anyone over the age of 60 every day is like, well, we haven't blown ourselves up yet. I don't know. I hadn't planned for this.
Good job on you, right?
I love it. It's like mild disappointment. The planet's still here.
So we start a few years into the future, which doesn't look very pretty. And here we have the story of an Australian policeman who goes out to avenge his partner being horribly mutilated and the death of his wife and infant son at the hands of... Well, infant daughter?
His wife doesn't die.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. She didn't die. She
just left crippled and he abandons her in the hospital.
That's right! You're totally right. I apologize. She doesn't die. I was thinking she was left for dead. They were talking about savaging, pulling parts off of her. So I kind of took it as her being dead.
I think it's left
brain dead, but
really vague.
I think I think that she is. I mean, I think it's kind of like maybe not a situation like the Goose, because remember, the Goose doesn't die either.
Yeah, he's not.
No, he's just left in a little burn tent.
And I assume that it's similar to her, except with treads.
Well, and missing body parts, if you notice, because she's missing an arm, at least, or a leg, because she doesn't have all her parts on the bed. You can tell that.
Yes.
Yeah, she won't be able to sign to him anymore. Yeah.
And wow, you are a cruel bastard, Scott. She can't clap. She can't clap anymore either.
Awesome! Wow.
Her career as a saxophonist is gone.
I know, right? Maybe play the piccolo, but possibly with support. But yes, okay, she doesn't die, but she is horribly mutilated. His partner is completely burned, like over all of his body, and his infant son met the Goodyear man. So, or the Michelin man, either one. And anyway,
actually, I think those tires were made. No, I'm kidding.
Anyway, he goes mad and goes after a motorcycle gang, abandoning whatever oath these police took, which I don't think is much, and going after them in a badass car. And it's not a very deep plot by any means, but it's the execution, at least, that stuck with me for this film. Let's start with you, Glenn. Would you say Miller's direction of this film really helps, I think, put it above some of the other films that had come out around that time of a similar theme, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think so. I think I've been reading a lot of stuff about these movies over the last week and a half, because now people, all of millennials are like, I just saw Mad Max for the first time and it was stupid. So,
fucking millennials.
I think part of the problem is that a film like this, you have to take in the context of when it was made, as well as where. Right. And anyone who watches a movie like this and doesn't get it, I think the first thing you need to do is you need to check out. It's called Not Quite Hollywood.
Yes.
It's the wild and something history of Ozploitation, because this is an Ozploitation film.
Yes.
The whole, Australia did these types of movies. That was, it was them breaking out, doing their own kind of actiony and revenge type films, and this film is pretty brutal in a lot of ways. Yeah. There are scenes that I don't know. It'd be the rare studio that would greenlight a gang rape scene.
Yeah.
Nowadays, and then you pretty much have that in this. But yeah, the direction. Yeah, I think direction. Because there are some parts of the script that I will agree with one of the reviews I read where I'm like, I'm not quite sure what. So you got the guy who's he and his girlfriend were just gang raped by a bunch of bikers, and he's running away with like blood coming out of his butt, pretty much, I believe, as he's running away. And Goose is just like, hey, fella, hey, you're a turkey. I'm like, what? What is. So. Aside from some little quips with the script, this is, I think it starts with a good slow burn. You don't go into a lot of the specifics of why the world is the way it is.
Right. Which that's what I liked.
Yeah, and I think that's good, because I don't think it's necessary. You kind of start going, it's like, okay, I mean, you have to accept the fact that, so there's like a fuel crisis, but there's roving gangs just driving everywhere all the time, so I don't know where they're getting all that fuel from in the fuel crisis, but I try not to think too much about that, because it's a good revenge flick, and you got some cool cars and some good little chase scenes. So, and I mean, I kind of think, of where this was made, when it was made. I don't even know what the budget for this was, but
like $400,000, I think.
Yeah.
Well, according to IMDb, estimated $650,000, and most of that was probably on stunts.
Okay, now I'm seeing. Yeah. Oh no, then never mind. I'm looking at Mad Max. I'm looking at Road Warrior. Never mind.
I was gonna say we'll get to Road Warrior, but
I think he did for what he had to work with. I think he did a really, really good job.
Yeah, I will agree. What about you, Cole? Did you like the direction of George Miller in this? Do you think that helped really make this from going to a kind of obscure odd film to really becoming the film that it is? Uh,
Yeah, man. George Miller. I mean, what really saves a movie like this, although there weren't many movies like this when it came out, but what saves a movie like this is directorial flourishes, man. You know, how you can take, in this case, a low budget and a simple idea and really make it unique.
mhm.
And I guess that's where low budget films have a chance to shine, is you can do shit like that, and really just do crazy unique things with a desolate location and maybe not a whole lot of people looking over your shoulder when you perform stunts. I really, I realized watching this last night, I hadn't seen this since I started making movies at 24.
Oh,
And
wow.
it had been a long time. I've always owned it, but I watched Road Warrior and Beyond Thunderdome probably 100 times before I ever saw this, because growing up, this is, obviously prior to the internet, and where I grew up in Evansville, Wisconsin, we just had a little video station attached to a liquor store that was called the Party Port, and for whatever reason, they didn't have the first movie. So it wasn't until years later that Hometown Video opened up with all of their bells and whistles and put the littler video station out of business, obviously, but they had everything, and I was able to take it home and see it, and didn't enjoy it as much. Obviously, you can imagine having watched Road Warrior and Beyond Thunderdome 100 times, and then watching this as a kid in southern Wisconsin, you're going to be like, well, that's not nearly as good. Now, having watched it, realizing I thought the budget was $400,000, but still, I mean, still with this new I mean, that's a huge feat to accomplish with that kind of money. What he did, you could pick it apart because it doesn't really seem post-apocalyptic in some areas, but that's just, we're nitpicking. I mean, this is low-budget filmmaking at its absolute best.
But
see, really good stuff. My only complaint is, honestly, and even understanding that they had no money, and even understanding the climate in which this movie was made, the setup for his family's death is so long, and it's set up for so many scenes, dude. And then the payoff is exponentially short in comparison. The revenge section of this movie is really brief.
Mm-hmm.
So it still bugs me. It bugged me as a kid, and it bugged me watching it again twice yesterday. I think the revenge section of this movie is really quick, and there's an awful lot of, I mean, I don't think there's this much bait and prey in any Friday the 13th movie. I mean, that's my only complaint. But it's a magnificent low-budget film, really.
Yes. And Scott, what about you for his direction, George Miller? You think he was able to make a mountain out of a molehill?
Yeah, I mean, seconding Glenn's recommendation for people to watch Not Quite Hollywood, I think at one point, it might even be in the trailer, at one point in the movie, though, for sure, Quentin Tarantino says the Australians had a way of shooting car scenes that made you want to jerk off. And I'm not that much into cars, but it's true. You got to remember that, okay, this was an anomaly at the time. The only thing that was kind of similar to it was Death Race 2000 a few years before. But there were a lot of freaking car movies. You had Vanishing Point. You had Gone in 60 Seconds. Smokey and the Bandit. I mean, all these car movies. No car movie would put you in that action like this. And it's because they would shoot and I was listening to the audio commentary earlier this week, and they would actually like put that camera like right on the ground. So instead of giving you a safe distance away from the cars, they would put those cameras right on the ground or right up against like the car that was traveling alongside them, and they would just roll it, and those other cars would come within like 6 inches of that camera, and they would undercrank it or whatever, and to make it look like they were going in even faster. I think it was funny. They said, "Yeah, these cop cars actually couldn't go beyond 60." It's like they said they couldn't go beyond 60, so we had to undercrank the camera all the time because to make it look like they went faster. Because was it undercrank or overcrank it to make it go fast? I don't know. Cole, you know more.
You run it slower.
Undercrank it. Okay, so undercrank it. I was correct. Okay, to make it look like it goes faster because they said it just wasn't. They just wouldn't go that fast. We had to give that illusion, but it puts you so in that moment. I mean, we even have cartoony moments like where before two of the characters crash, and it is definitely a recall. The Knight Rider and then finally the big guy. You see that almost cartoonish thing of their eyes like popping out of their heads.
I love that!
Yeah, it is completely unrealistic, but you know what? It puts you in that moment, and it makes it seem like such an intense, terror-filled moment. I actually love
I'm sorry, Scott. Didn't know you've ever been in a head-on collision. Maybe that's exactly what happened.
I don't know. You know what? No one was hanging out with a camera, that's for sure. But it was. But here's the thing: is that this movie I think is actually very brilliant, and I actually think it. I'm one of the few, because I know a lot of people they consider it kind of the lesser of the series. I actually like it almost as much as the second one. I think it's really fascinating. I just want to say what I think is really fascinating about it is that it's definitely disarming when you first see it if you see these movies out of order.
Mm-hmm.
But what you've got to remember is like when these movies take place, they did the brilliant thing of actually showing the de-evolution of a society on camera, and this takes place right as the world is going to hell. And then you have the next one that's like a few years afterwards, and then the one after that is after enough time has passed for generations to start growing up, not knowing anything else, and sand is sweeping over these roads and everything.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. That I think it's funny. This suffers from what I call Evil Dead syndrome.
Yes.
This suffers from Evil Dead syndrome. The whole trilogy, and let me know if I'm wrong or right. In that, what people picture as a Mad Max film is actually Road Warrior.
Yes.
Yeah.
If people actually watch this first Mad Max, and it didn't really click on me till I was watching. I marathoned them. If you watch them all back to back, and I watched them like, no, it's Army of Darkness, Evil Dead syndrome, to where everybody equates the Ash character to the later films, but you look at him in the first film, he's not nearly as the sarcastic, quippy guy that and just like in this one. All the wild vehicles in that really that's from the second one, though everybody equates it with that. The first one, you're right, and that's what threw me, because it never really dawned on me when I was younger and watching these that we're watching it's civilization that has crumbled not many years from when the film's taken place. It's like it's crumbled just after, say, you're watching the film and it says a few years later, you're like in the time period where it starts to crumble, and we're seeing the effects just after it crumbles. But we don't get that explanation, which I love. And, and I just loved it because there is some semblance of civilization yet. You do still have people going out for ice cream. You still have businesses, but you do have these roving gangs, which this motorcycle gang, headed by Toe Cutter, who is an interesting head villain. What did you guys think of Toe Cutter? I liked him specifically for the fact of they gave him a little bit of a different personality. He gives commands in grunts and whistles. Scott, what did you think of Toe Cutter as a villain?
I love him. I love him. Sure. Anything you say, anything I say. What a wonderful philosophy you have. It's beautiful. I love this guy. He is one of my favorite villains. Again, I got to tell you, note that I am so thrilled to see him on the screen and everything like that. I'm looking forward to seeing him again.
Yeah,
And, and
same actor playing in the new one, the Fury
yes,
Road
the
one.
new one. Oh my god.
Scott's very happy about
Oh
it.
man, no, I love this guy. He is great. He is just a wonderful villain. He has this sway on his people that is great. I mean, it's just when you look at it, it's really nothing more than a handful of punks.
Yeah.
And they're like these subhuman people who are just into like smashing and killing and everything like that. But he has like this little pull on them, like when there's the scene where oh crap, the boy is left behind.
Oh sure.
Johnny the boy.
Johnny the boy is left behind, and oh god, you got to help me. Which is the guy, the bleach blonde son of a bitch?
That would be I think that's what did they call him? I forgot his name too. Yeah, the blonde-haired guy.
I always get him mixed up.
Spike. Spike.
No, it's not Spike.
The guy who looked like Spike.
I can't remember if it's like Mudguts or if it's one of the other guys or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, we're getting beyond it. But like, there's the time where he's not going to go back, and it's not to the point where like people won't question this guy, but they'll do it respectfully. He says, "I'm not going back, not for him," and he says, "But it's not for him, it's for me." You know, and then he goes back. I mean, I love that. He's got this wonderful sway for the people. This is a really fantastic villain. As much as I love, and you're going to, man, I'm going to have people like say no way, but as much as I love the Lord Humongous, this is my favorite villain of the trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Walk away.
No.
Just walk away now.
I love Toe Cutter. He is just great. So,
what about you, Glenn? Toe Cutter, did you like him as a villain?
Oh yeah, and absolute best reaction to having a shotgun pulled on you ever. When the grandma pulls a shotgun on him, he's all like, ah! like a drag queen. All of a sudden, he's just like, that high pitched kind of squeal and shaking his hands and he's a great. I mean, and part of what I enjoy about this movie is that some of the guys like Toe Cutter, the actors, they're so over the top.
Yeah,
they were all Shakespearean actors.
Yeah, and you watch this and you're like, it just gives it a little bit something extra because these are not rough and tumble guys. These were stage trained actors.
Yeah,
and watching like someone who probably a week earlier was performing Hamlet and all of a sudden he's Toe Cutter. It makes it that much better.
Definitely. I just got a kick out of it, and like I said, after watching it again, I forgot about how he communicated with his guys occasionally, where he'd just make a grunt or a whistle or a motion. He didn't really use words, and everybody's like, "Oh, okay," they knew exactly what he meant, which helped establish that they had been around him long enough, at least, to understand him. Cole, what'd you think of Toe Cutter?
Great, man. A very, very interesting performance and character, and I wish maybe his demise had been a little longer.
Just because he's such a jerk.
There's just not enough revenge stuff in here for me. These guys die way too quick, man. But I like the performance so much, and it's so creepy. It's so creepy. Yeah. I can imagine sitting in a theater in '79 watching this and really thinking, "Holy shit, this is groundbreaking stuff."
Well, yeah, especially when they pick the villains to be just a motorcycle gang. I always love that. I love that difference between where the bad guys all rode motorcycles and the cops and everybody drove muscle cars. I just loved that difference in them as well. I mean, here we got characters even down to the vehicles they choose, and it makes sense, And now let's talk about our quote-unquote cops.
The bronze?
The bronze. I really did it. this is what I think added to that feeling of we've just got civilization deteriorating, and you've got these guys just hanging on, because this really seemed like a group of just rogue guys who had a badge, but, because we know the law system is corrupt with that one scene with the guy getting off because nobody showed up at court. And you got these guys who are supposed to be cops, but I don't know. There wasn't much difference between them and Toe Cutter's gang, was there? Outside of they didn't rape people.
It's the idea. It's the ideas. I mean, that's what Max is concerned about. And he, at one point, he wants to turn in his badge and live a life with his wife, because he says, I'm starting to enjoy this. He says I spend any more time on that road and I become one of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's these people, and it's again with society on the brink of collapse, like in the process. Yeah. It's no accident that this weird, strange castle that it looks like they operate out of is actually like a sewage treatment plant. Yeah. That's not an accident. I mean, that's like basically the respect that the police get at this point, and it's as much as they're holding it together. And as things get scarier and they get more frustrated, they start using heavier tactics, and still like getting. I mean, you can actually see that reflected in other places.
Sure. The Hall of Justice.
Hall of Justice, yeah. Superman flew away a long time ago.
Hall of Justice needs a few repairs. Cole, what do you think of our police force in this that Mad Max is a part of? These guys really, what did you think of them? I mean, they really did.
I thought, it's interesting, like you said, Mark, watching these back to back it's an interesting experience overall as a film watcher. But what stood out to me is the tone those officers set in that first movie, specifically when one of the guys sees his buddy perhaps fatally injured, although the guy survives, with the glass in his throat.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. He survived because he's talking later with the...
He's on the mic and he says, yeah, you might want to send a meat wagon. Looks like this guy's about done.
Yeah, I know. That's an ambulance, though. That's an ambulance they're talking about.
No, I know. It's just the indifference towards violence that these cops express. Actually, our lead character carries through most of the series. I see echoes of the mentality, this specific police force's mentality, in his character right up to the end of Beyond Thunderdome. That's what I noticed about it. Just watching them back to back is like we're in the midst of a corrupt police force, not because they're inherently corrupt, but just because what do they have to work with? As you guys said, the Hall of Justice's sign is falling apart, and there's a little bit of political intrigue with their bosses. Am I mistaken? Which I like. They just kind of hint at it. They don't shove it down your throat, but the whole tone of this film is specifically vague, which is probably why it's lasted.
Yeah.
Probably a good reason that that George Miller was like, we're not going to give it a year as Scott said, we're not going to give it a specific date. It really more or less holds up. But to answer your question directly, I think it's very creepy and very appropriate. I mean, these are how cops would react. Like the guy running through the gorgeously filmed field with blood coming out of his rear end, and the one guy's like, hey, you gonna come back here or what?
Yeah, and then he did go after him. He just let him run. He's like, forget it.
For some reason, and maybe this is just a sign of the times, but that seemed very realistic to me personally. Like, oh yeah, you know what? That is the sign of a completely bankrupt society. When a cop has that sort of reaction to that sort of violence. I actually thought that was very intriguing, the indifference of these cops and the way they acted.
Take into account, too, their boss was a guy who spent most of his time in leather pants shirtless and was named Fifi.
I was going to talk about that. We'll get to that in just a second, some of the overtone. But what about these cops, Glenn? Did you feel they were kind of like the way they were because they got it at both ends, either from the law and from the society, which basically didn't give them any help.
Somewhat. I think it's they're kind of a product of their environment.
Mm-hmm.
This is not, this is not obviously the world's gone a bit to shit already, or at least this part of Australia has. And the guys they're dealing with, these are not the fact that freaking Johnny the Boy isn't like a bloody pulpy mess when he is getting out of jail.
Yeah.
Shows that they still have some honor.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, to a point, towards the end where, of course, anything goes. But I think it's more just the fact that they're the stuff they face every day. It's gonna wear on you a bit, and
sure.
you're gonna get a bit rough, and you're gonna get a bit broken.
Yeah, definitely. This kind of felt like the police force from RoboCop.
I was gonna say that when you were talking about when you guys were talking about how how blasé they are in regards to reacting to the deaths of people, or what they go through, like how they're kind of in that gallows humor thing. It is like RoboCop. I just think when I look at like the way they do gallows humor type stuff where they're joking around, like how when the goose is joking about the guy was trying to scream with his face ripped off, and he's like telling it as a standard story. I was going back to when I was in I worked for a very brief period of time, and I almost did it as a career, and I stopped. I almost worked in television news. Let me tell you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, let me tell. Yeah, it was a mistake. But behind, I haven't had great jobs since then, but I'm still glad I never went back to it. Honestly, that's the effect it had on me, because, and one of the main things was that people got so jaded and built up such a tough skin. You have to in that business, because you're dealing with all these things. Let me tell you something. If you're talking about a place that deals with national news, every story that comes in about a school shooting, about somebody being raped and tortured, about a serial killer, about war, all this stuff, there are people making jokes about it.
Yeah.
And it's not cool.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there are people, and it's their way of dealing with it. I mean, I remember I started working there a few months after the Columbine shooting happened. So
Sure.
Of course we're dealing with a long time ago, and they had a van out at Columbine High School. They'd sent one out out of state into Columbine High School, and the students didn't want any part of them. They were throwing rocks at the news van.
Sure.
And I'd hear comments every day where people were joking about the kids at Columbine High School, and Levinson says, like, man, throwing rocks at us, fuck you. I wish they shot y'all,
Yeah.
Not cool. But that's the kind of thing that they felt that where they were positioned, was people that were kind of like in between. Like they weren't a fan. Criminals weren't a big fan, like the police force in this movie. Criminals aren't a big fan of them, and everybody else. So they're in this position of, this is their world.
Yeah.
All of their world is this, and they deal with it by joking around and being blasé about horrible, horrible, horrible things.
Yes,
I kind of was it's hard for me to watch this movie without being reminded of that chapter in my life, because I was like, it's kind of like when so and so is
sure.
So.
Well, so the police force, they're getting at both ends. Kind of reminded us of the Detroit cops, at least for me. Now, let's talk about a minute. Glenn mentioned their leader, the chaps man with the bling collar. There are a lot. Am I off? There are a lot of homoerotic or homosexual undertones in this film, are there not?
More so in the second.
More so in the second, but in the first, it's there, isn't it? I mean, between the gang and even some of the police. Am I off on that, or are those there? Would you say I am off?
Boy, I actually hadn't noticed it as much in the first one, just personally. But then again, I grew up with leather heroes. My favorite film of all time is The Crow, which owes so much to Road Warrior. It's not even funny. But that aside, Blade. I remember Blade was a movie I loved as a teenager. My heroes always had like leather, so I didn't notice that specifically. But of course, that element is there. I mean, but these biker guys, they seem to be pansexual. I mean, they seem to just want to screw everything. Period. I mean, they really do. They seem like in all these post-apocalyptic movies. I remember watching Book of Eli. It's the same thing. Every time a woman is alone, it's said and done that she's going to be gang raped.
And that's certainly something. And that's certainly something that all of the Road Warrior rip-offs, like from Italy and Spain and everything else, took advantage of. If there was a woman alone in the wasteland, she was fair game for whatever the bad guys are.
The name of the game seems to be when society falls apart, it's sexual perversion rules for these movies. Not so much in Beyond Thunderdome, but in the first two for sure. I mean, when people have free reign, in the movies it seems to be they're gonna screw everything.
It doesn't matter what it is. Would you agree with that, Glenn?
I think now, okay, if this had been a movie made in Hollywood, then I would say that yes, this is the Top Gun of post-apocalyptic movies, and it is hugely homoerotic. However, having seen that it's in Australia, I think there's a couple things. One, I think there is a lot less of that insecurity and masculinity, and that I mean, you could have the butchest guy could wear a fucking dress down the street and no one would say a fucking word to him because it's like, whatever, he's doing what he wants to do. But I think also, now this is what I have read and what I have gleaned from the few friends I have from Australia, is that they're also a much less prudish country than the States are, and just much more, hey, sex is sex, we're gonna do it, and there's a hole there, I can put something in it. So I think part of it is just it shows kind of a difference in
culture,
the culture a bit, that they're just, I guess, not as conservative as we are.
Yeah.
Maybe part of that comes, from the having been a penal colony at one time.
Yeah, exactly. As I was
but say. I mean, and the bikers too. I mean, figure a lot of the bikers in this movie are not actors.
Right.
They're actual biker gangs that Miller paid with beer.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that true?
Yes, a lot of the bikers are actually he hired biker gangs.
Oh my God, that's incredible!
And there's a bunch of people who got paid pretty much in beer.
Oh yeah, every time there was whenever you see like a party scene, all those people are like, or whatever they're tipping over from at the moment, that was their payment.
Yeah.
That's low budget filmmaking, man.
That's great.
Awesome.
Also, you gotta think that there was also, I mean, I'd say it's much more so where it is flat out stated in the Road Warrior, but in this one, there is a certain fetishism to leather. Now, I love I'm no slave to fashion at all. I'm like a t-shirt and jeans kind of guy. The only piece of clothing that I absolutely love is my black leather coat. But I mean, it's awesome. But there is a fetishism to it because you have like things like the biker gangs, Hell's Angels stuff that came out. You also had stuff like Kenneth Anger's Scorpio Rising. You have things like bands like the Ramones and stuff like that. But also a lot of the leather stuff that was adopted from punk bands in Europe came from fetish shops. Judas Priest, of course, was like the big leather heavy metal band. It didn't come out for until 10, 15 years that Rob Halford just flat out says, "Oh yeah, I'm gay." It's like, so, so, and yeah, all that leather stuff, yeah, that all came from, like, the leather bars and stuff.
Sure.
And so it's always gone hand in hand,
Right.
of the leather and the fetishism of it. It's a very sexual fashion, and often it's often been eroticized, and it has often been homoeroticized over the decades, I'd say.
Well, and that's why I just wanted to bring it up. I mean, those are kind of there, and I wanted to get everybody's opinion on that. Like you said, I had no problem with it, but it just kind of a vibe I got from it, from when they had it, and so that's why I wanted to bring that up. And we'll just wrap up quick on Mad Max here, because I want to get to the Road Warrior and the other two. But as far as performances go, love Toe Cutter, love everybody in it, and Mel Gibson is young in this movie, but
21, right?
I think so, yeah. I think he was like 20. I mean, he was really young, but I thought he played the Max character well. It almost felt like the role was kind of written for his type of guy, his type of performance possibly, because he wasn't really pushed, I don't think, too much for his acting chops in this. What do you think, real quick, of Mad Max's performance? We'll start with Glenn, of Mel Gibson's performance being a young actor in a film like this.
Well, I mean, he wasn't even much of an actor at this point. I mean, you're talking about a guy who, the only reason he got cast is he went to support a buddy and had been in a bar fight the night before and was all beaten up. And
I love that.
A casting director saw him and asked him to come back in 2 weeks because they were looking for freaks to cast. And then, of course, he healed, and saying as secured my masculinity, he was a good-looking man back then.
Oh yeah,
and probably went on fewer anti-Semitic rants. Maybe, I don't know. And he came back and charmed them, and they had him read for Max, and then he got the role as Max. So, not the best acting ever. It's more standing around, look pensive a lot, which he did pretty well, and then, or sit in a car and look pensive. So he had that down pretty well.
Yes.
I think it's also hard at times to gauge the acting in a film where the audio quality is really not that good.
Yeah, I noticed that as well.
In this film, I mean, as it says, as it said, this movie was cobbled together. This was Miller's first movie. I mean, fuck, he was I don't know if he actually became. I think he was a doctor.
Yeah, he had a doctor.
Yeah. So, but I mean, for what the role was, I think he's fine. It's not like some amazing, oh my God, he deserves an Oscar. But it's not like some of the stuff I've seen on Sci-Fi Channel, where I'm like, is that person alive? Because I don't know. I think it's not really acting; it's more just a death rattle.
Yeah. and he could drive a car, which the stunts in here are just phenomenal for a film of this budget. What'd you think of his performance, Cole? You think it did all right for especially one of his
man, for 21. I mean, my first performance was at 25, and I'm about to post my first 2 movies on YouTube just because I'm 5 movies in. It's like,
yay!
Why not?
Yeah, sure.
But I did a performance at 25, which I stand by, But for 21, I cannot imagine doing that kind of work. I really can. He did a great job.
Yeah. For
a 21-year-old actor, when you put aside what he has become, and when you just watch Mad Max at, say, 3:33 in the morning over a glass of wine, not that I've done that, he's fine. Shit.
Yeah.
Who else is going to do that kind of work? From innocent to complete kind of innocence. Not really, although they set him up to be a badass, and then he's kind of plays the whole thing innocent, and then he becomes badass. I don't know. I mean, he did fine. He's great. Yeah. He's fine.
And besides, people watch it for the car wrecks anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't also mention for those of you who like the movie Saw,
Yeah.
It probably wouldn't exist if it wasn't for this movie.
They ripped that off.
Well, they didn't rip it off. They credit the directors because they're Aussies as well. The guys who make the series.
I didn't
the
realize
final
that they
scene
had
of this
credited
movie
him.
as their inspiration for the first Saw movie.
With giving him the hacksaw.
The hacksaw.
Mark, could I mention something really quickly?
Yeah,
I
sure.
just want to say the original language version that I watched probably contributes to why I enjoyed it much more than the dubbed version. If anybody listening to this podcast happens to, have access to a version with the American voices over it, please don't watch it.
Well, that's how we grew up with it too. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that, Cole, because that's what it was like. The first thing I was going to say is that about the performances is like I didn't get to see the performance until like about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Because when we grew up, we got a little background for people. AIP handled the distribution in the United States, and Mad Max barely got released in the United States. It was a hit in Europe, hit in Australia, barely got released here because AIP was in its like death throes right at this point. And what they said is they took one look at the film and they said no one's going to understand what these Australians are saying. Dub everyone, including Mel Gibson.
Oh.
And the dub job is very cartoonish, and that's what we grew up with. And it would always irk me because you'd hear, the great, people don't believe in heroes anymore, and you'd hear it like with like this, people don't believe in heroes anymore. Like it was like really bad, and then like about I think it was around the time that MGM released it on DVD.
Yep.
And get on the special edition, not even on the original edition, but on like a special anniversary edition or something, like a 30-year anniversary edition. We finally in this country got to hear that original soundtrack. It makes all the difference in the world. And you said like, oh my God, the acting is really good in this. You're talking about Mel Gibson. The reason I'm talking about this is because now you look at it and say, it's an iconic performance. He does not say a lot, but neither did Clint Eastwood in some of those movies and stuff. And it is great because you see a guy at it's called Mad Max not because he's already a little crazy at the beginning.
Right.
The great moment is that Knight Rider's been like plowing through his friends like nothing, cutting through people in a stolen Interceptor. The same Knight Rider in the beginning is driving the same car, not of course not the exact same because it blew, but the same car that he will be driving by the end. That's important.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And what happens is that at the very end they say, Max, we need you to come in here, and we've only seen this guy like his hands as he's greasing up, or him like putting on his shades and stuff, and he just bumps up against him. And right away, Knight Rider's like freaking out. Why? Because he just came into contact with someone crazier and more reckless than he is.
Yeah.
And you get this, and he doesn't have to like growl or like punch people out to do it. He just is that, and yet you also see, kind of a more tender side of him. And this whole movie's about how that tender side kind of gets extinguished.
Well, yeah.
It's a wonderful performance. It's a wonderful performance, wonderful acting. The thing about this movie is that, I was watching, I knew, like, okay, Fury Road's coming out. Should watch a couple of these again. And honestly, it was like 4 in the morning or something like that. I should be like, I should be in bed, but I'm not tired yet. Mad Max, I'll just watch the first 10 minutes.
Yeah. You watch
I really do. Nuh-uh. The second the credits come on, I love the credits and everything in this movie. I'm like hour and a half later, I'm just watching the end credits of this movie going, oh my God, I love this movie so much, I forget how much I love it all the time. It's an amazing film.
It's got great stunts, impressive for its budget, and yeah, it definitely set the tone for films like it, including the films in the series afterwards, for years to come when it comes to your apocalyptic type film, which again, the apocalypse in this one isn't quite stated. Unlike our second one, we're going to head off now to our second one here, because I don't want things to go too late for everyone, and that is The Road Warrior, or Mad Max 2 The Road Warrior. In fact, I had a long debate with my son about how the naming of a series should or shouldn't have the name of the character or the first one in front of it. We got into a long debate on this, on it, and he made some good points. I made some good points. I don't think we convinced each other either way, but we have The Road Warrior, which is actually Mad Max 2, which has the bigger budget. I'm assuming they made it based off of the popularity of the first one, how it grew. This one had a budget estimated $2 million. And here we have a completely post-apocalyptic Australia, a wasteland, where we have our cynical drifter Max, who helps out this band of people who actually have a gasoline outpost that are being harassed by a group of bandits led by a guy named, what is it, the Humongous. Lord Humongous.
The Lord Humongous, the Ayatollah of rock and roll.
Yes. And they want this gas, obviously, and these people don't want to give it up, and Max ends up getting caught in the middle reluctantly, I will say, because, by God, he needs his gas, too. I'm going to say right off for me, and you guys can chime in, I was a little disappointed in the beginning that we had to have the narration of why things were. And I felt that was maybe to appeal to a wider audience, but did that disappoint anyone that we actually get an explanation of why things are so apocalyptic now in The Road Warrior? Let's start with you, Glenn. Did that kind of disappoint you a bit, or?
No, I wouldn't say it disappointed me.
Was it necessary, though? You know,
not really necessary, no, but not. It wasn't a big enough thing where I'm like, this is fucking ruined.
Mm-hmm.
So, no. I mean, I mean, I could take it or leave it. It's
sure. What about you, Scott? I mean, the first one opened up just saying a few years later, and now here we get a bit of a backstory of why things are the way they are. Was that a good way to approach the opening, or a bad way, or?
I get what you're saying. And I could almost like get around it. Except here's the thing: is like, okay, for one thing, it's important. I think it is important to give the very quick backstory of, to understand Max, you have to know where he came from.
Mm-hmm.
Because they say this is how he starts to learn to live again and stuff like that, blah, 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 blah. It takes him a long freaking time, incidentally. Because by Beyond Thunderdome, he's already pretty shitty.
Yeah.
But that's important, and also I think it means more because because it's also setting up this entire different world, and it's a world that the actual apocalyptic events will be directly referenced in the next film. So I see it as a bridging device, and I think it's while there's a lot of films where I would say no, don't do it, it's not necessary. It's kind of not necessary here, but it is. But it's an important bridging device when you consider the series as a whole. So I'm totally cool with it.
But I had read somewhere that his intentions originally wasn't, and we'll get to Thunderdome of where we get the supposed actual reason for the apocalypse, that wasn't actually his original intent of what the apocalypse was caused by. The apocalypse was more caused by, I read an article somewhere where he was quoted saying that it was caused by economic greed, downturn, basically society folding in on itself, and lack of resources, and that's what caused the apocalypse, not.
And that's more interesting. I don't know. I mean, you can't say it's Hollywood because this is still very much an Australian film. Let's not forget that over here we call it The Road Warrior. Everywhere else in the world they call it Mad Max 2.
Yeah.
But they call it The Road Warrior here because, as I mentioned, Mad Max barely got released. No one knows what the hell Mad Max was, really.
Yeah.
You can't really say it's Hollywood because it's very much an Australian film, but I don't know. Maybe there's somebody who said, well, yeah, $2 million, that's not a lot of money, we can do that. Hey, unless you want to be working on 650,000 again.
Yeah.
Nuclear bombs. Okay,
yeah.
nuclear bombs. Whatever.
What about you, Cole? What about you, Cole? The reason for, we get a little history now of why the world is the way it is.
Yeah.
Was that needed? Did that take away a little bit away?
It's funny, man. I went into this movie, the rewatching of the trilogy, but specifically this movie, with that as a complaint. And now having watched them all three back to back, actually multiple times, it's essential. Without that, you have no context for the series, really. I mean, I think it's good, and it's pretty damn vague.
Yeah.
I mean, it uses various splices of archival footage and the narration of an old man who turns out to be the character that is labeled strictly as Feral
Boy, yeah.
Feral Boy. But I think that's important that Max restores innocence to the point where there is an old man who can, pardon my French, fucking recount history to us.
Right.
When before Max's influence, this kid was throwing a razor-edged boomerang at people.
And grunting, yeah. And grunting.
I mean, that may be looking too deep into things, but that's how I watch movies, So
yeah.
I see that as vital, but I honestly, Mark, before, I knew I was going to do this podcast before I rewatched the movies, and I thought, man, I'm just going to bash that opening of Road Warrior. Because it just seems so unnecessary. But again, having watched them all, to me, and this is to me personally, it gives Beyond Thunderdome specifically a bit more heft.
It does, but Thunderdome actually ruined for me. I will say this one, while I didn't feel it was needed, I think it took away just a little bit for me. I didn't mind the opening and the background because we do get to see that some time has passed, at least between the first one and this one. Plus, in our Mad Max character, which I'll get to in a minute. But for me, I at least still like the vagueness of this one, still not giving a definite reason of why things went to shit like they did in Thunderdome. And we'll get to that when we get to Thunderdome, of the real reason it says why things are like, and I didn't think they needed to go there. But let's talk about Max now. Now, this film wasn't made too long after the first one, but is it me, or did they age Max really well?
Well, it's not real time. I
mean,
no,
I know. No, but what I'm saying is the way the films were made, they weren't made that far apart, but the actor, Mel Gibson, looks like he aged like 10 years.
They aged him. I think they aged him very specifically. They put a little bit of gray in his hair and stuff like that.
But he only had one gray stripe.
But he was the evil gremlin, I think the idea was that, is that they wanted to relay to people, especially people who had seen the original, because it was a bigger hit in Europe and Australia, and I think Japan was a huge hit too.
Yeah.
We know the first one came out 2 years ago. One, if you were in America, it didn't get released until 80 in America.
Sure,
the first one. But he's been out there a while. I've heard that each one takes 5 years apart. I don't know if I trust that. I would say 10.
I was gonna say Max looks a lot older.
I would say it's been around. It looks like it's been around 10 years or so at least.
And I love the white stripe they gave him too. The one white stripe. What do you think, Glenn? Do you think they aged him well? And does that white stripe lead to that whole condition where they say when you face a traumatic experience, you get a white stripe in your hair?
I don't know. I just think I think they age him well. It's stressful.
Yeah.
Very, very stressful. think of, it's you look at regular people who have well, I mean, regular people who have stressful jobs. I mean, look at Obama from when he took office to now, and he looks like he's aged a lot more than 8 years.
Well, every president actually.
Everyone except for Reagan, because he was fucking older beyond belief when he took office. And the only president who could stand in a full hurricane force winds, his hair would be fine, but his neck would be flapping everywhere.
Yeah.
But I think it's just it's hard. It's been a hard however many years. It's been very hard.
Cole, what about you? Did you like how they aged him? And did it really give that feel of some major time has passed?
Yeah, man. I can only gush about this movie. I mean, I love, love The Road Warrior. But I'll keep it short for this segment. I mean, his performance, Mel Gibson's performance in this film,
was it definitely
so
improved?
Good and so key. Mm-hmm. Apparently, he only has 12 lines, or I've never been the type of person to keep count. I admire people who have that kind of free time, but he has very, very few, and I mean that. I wasn't being sarcastic. He has very few pieces of dialogue, man, and what he does. There's a moment in here that comes at the beginning of the second act, I believe, or midway through the film, right in the middle of the dramatic tension, where he's recaptured the flight guy, the airplane guy.
The gyro
captain.
And they take, I would say, 2-3 minutes? It seems like longer, it might be less, where Max pillages through this guy's pocket. Yeah. For various things. All of it's junk. I don't think he keeps anything aside from a bullet that malfunctions later. But the point of that scene is that every little thing is valuable. Mm-hmm. And Max gets it, man. Max gets it. And you get that in Gibson's performance when he gives the little chime toy to, I wish this character had a name. I guess I have to call it.
The Feral Kid.
Apparently, it's so bad saying that.
He's called the Feral Kid. It's just that's what he's billed as.
Yeah, but I dig Gibson in this film. The question was, does he appear older? Hell yes, Mark, and rightfully so. His whole character feels older. Mm-hmm. Feels like he's just been living in the dregs. And he's right at the point where he's about to forget what being human is. Luckily he's got this dog and this feral kid. And that's meant as a joke.
Sounds like a movie in itself.
Yeah. No, I dig it, man. Yeah, he seems older. I love the film. The gray streak is great. I'm reminded of Heather Langenkamp in The First Night as well. Mm-hmm. I love that. And also The Breakfast Club.
Yes.
Did he frost his hair, or did Judd Nelson really go through something traumatic as a kid? Maybe when his stepdad was burning out a cigar. No, I really dig the gray streak.
Yeah, I caught that. And two, our Mad Max hero is flawed, not only mentally, but physically. He's got a brace. He's got a brace on it. I totally forgot until I watched this film that he had the brace on the knee. And there was a great moment, I don't know if you guys caught it, when they get in later in the movie where he's carrying the diesel to get the truck to get the to help get the tanker away from the gas refinery, where you got the guy who just subtly oils his brace because it squeaks.
Yeah.
Did you guys catch that?
Yes, man.
Well, yeah, because remember his leg. He got up and started walking around on that leg in the last movie. When no one should have been walking on that leg, but it was either that or die.
But just the fact that we have a flawed hero in here. Once again, Mel Gibson playing a flawed hero. I liked that because it also, as hard as he was, that was a vulnerability.
It's a vulnerability, but also you can look at it from both ways. One, yes, it does point out, you're absolutely right, it does point out the vulnerability of his character. It also shows how he's been on the road so much and how he has muted his emotions so much that he is almost like part of machine at this point as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, man.
Well, and his love of that car too. That beautiful car.
Last of the V8 Interceptors.
V8 Interceptor. I definitely say that this film, I think, defined it more for a lot of people. Wouldn't you say, Glenn, that as we mentioned earlier, that this film really kind of defined the Mad Max world to everybody more so than the first one?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one, it's the superior movie.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Two, I think when this movie came out, most people who saw this movie probably, I mean, I don't even think it was called Mad Max 2: The Road Warrior when it came out. It was just The Road Warrior.
Yeah.
Most people didn't know what the fuck Mad Max was.
Sure.
And there are people today who are still like, wait, there's a Mad Max? You mean Road Warrior? No. Mad Max is the original. Road Warrior is the second one. There's another movie? You mean the one with Tina Turner? No. That came before that. There was the original one that was made that happens before the Road Warrior. I've never seen that. No, you haven't, and most people haven't seen it, which is sad. But
that's crazy, really?
Oh, yeah, tons of people haven't seen it.
I didn't realize that.
Oh, especially with Fury Road out now. Look at the comments people make. There's many people who don't quite realize that there's actually a full trilogy before this film.
Well, yeah, I still don't call it Mad Max 2: The Road Warrior because my entire life was the Road Warrior. I mean, it's the same reason that I never call Star Wars Episode 4. Screw that. No, it's Star Wars. It's just Star Wars.
Again, that was part of the debate I had with Honorable Son Number 1.
Well, Honorable Son Number 1 is wrong. Wonderful kid, but
he refers to it as...
Listen to your dad. Listen to your dad.
He does refer to it as Star Wars Empire Strikes Back and not just Empire Strikes Back. Which I'll give him. He doesn't refer to it as the episode numbers, so I at least raised him that right.
Yeah, you're doing good. You're doing good.
So, Matt, let's... This is a superior film. I think we all agree that this is a film that falls in almost the Godfather 2 type category where the sequel actually outperforms in almost every way its original.
It gives you a deeper world. It gives you a deeper mythology, just like The Godfather does too.
Right.
I mean, it really, it's, even though it's still like an action film, and with even less reliance on dialogue, it's a more immersive experience. Absolutely. I'm sorry, Glenn. I think you were about to say something, and I stepped on you. Sorry.
No.
Would you?
Okay, never mind. So yeah.
I will say though that I think in a number of ways, even though this has dark moments, this almost felt like a little bit. Had a lot more lighter moments in it as well, especially when we get to the gyro captain. What do you think, Glenn? Do you think there's a little bit more humor in this one than the first one?
There's humor in the first one.
Okay, so there you go.
I mean, aside from the big guy named Fifi, I don't think there's really any humor for the most part. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's some dark humor,
right.
But yeah, there's more. There's still not much,
and
it's just I think it's the right amount too. It's just a very small amount to just ease a bit of the tension in the film,
right? But
and it's not even so much comedy. It's more just the guy is quirky.
The gyro captain, played by Bruce Spence, who I thought did a fantastic job. Well, now I'm thinking about it, maybe was his character meant to show that even though Mad Max is a badass and he survived this long, he may not exactly still be the sharpest knife in the drawer? Because the gyro captain gets the jump on him. I mean, he's lucky the gyro captain wasn't a nastier guy, because there'd be no Mad Max. I mean, would you agree that maybe he was put there to kind of show that Max isn't just just as much as he might think he is, himself? because I was trying to figure out, or because I thought that I don't think the Gyro Captain was there for comic relief, but he had a purpose of being kind of a not quite opposite to Max, but I felt like he was the reminder to Max that hey, you aren't exactly, there are people out there still smarter than you.
Okay, there's the thing is that I think his thing is that there is in a world gone mad where in a lot of ways might makes right, this guy's intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
I think that intelligence still has its place. Intelligence is still useful. You don't have to be the strongest if you're the smartest. I don't think it's so much to put Max in his place, because Max gets his ass kicked enough in this film already.
That's true. You're right.
So I think it's more of a there's still people out there who aren't just simply and it's the fact that too, it's the guy, because he's smart, he just doesn't kill Max straight off.
Right, because he realizes Max may serve a purpose for him as well.
Exactly.
Right.
There's also a difference between intelligence and cunning.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we've had world leaders that have proven that. So, I mean, knowing 2 + 2 is a lot different than knowing how to survive,
right,
and having your instincts sharp.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I don't know. It's such a good question, because I had never even thought about it until you brought this up. That maybe he's been out, and like his head has been in the sun too long. I'd never thought about that. It's interesting, but I don't know. Maybe it's coming just upon somebody, one of his own ilk. I don't know.
Sure. What about you, Cole? Anything? The Gyro Captain actually kind of smarter than our hero in a lot of ways?
No, I don't know. Yeah, sure. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he could be, but on the same level, I wonder if the point of the story is that nobody's seen something as horrible as Max.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy talks about losing family members, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the same character, the guy who has kind of like a blonde Mick Jagger, that guy?
The guy who flies the plane, who's wearing the pajamas.
Okay.
The Gyro
Captain. I didn't
Captain.
know that he was called that. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, that's the Gyro Captain. No, you're thinking of the guy that's head of the.
This whole time I thought you guys. I don't know these characters' names, and I'll tell you why, so I don't sound like an idiot. I don't want any Fury Road spoilers.
Sure.
So I just watched these movies. I didn't go online and kind of research them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what the guy in the airplane was called. They don't give him a name.
No, they just call him the Gyro Captain. So
a lot of these guys only have like basic names of their function, except for Papagayo.
Understood. So, okay, now that I know that, what was the question, Mark? I apologize. Was he a threat to Mad Max?
Well, no, not the threat, but the purpose of his character there was kind of to show that Mad Max maybe wasn't still the brightest, even though he's been through so much. And here you have a guy who got the jump on him and could have pretty much. I mean, he knew Max had the car rigged as well. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, the guy was 2 steps ahead of Max for most of it.
Yeah, man. I have a difficult time with that character because of the way he was treated in the next installment.
Well,
it's a different character.
It's a different character. We'll get to the 3rd installment.
It is.
We'll get to the 3rd. We'll get to Thunderdome in a minute.
I will say that apparently I am a stupid fanboy.
No, not
a lot of people think that. A lot of people think that.
We will definitely.
Can I just say for the record that I have not been online at all since I've watched these films?
No, it's okay, Cole. No, it's okay.
Literally, I haven't. I'm going into Fury Road Friday with a clean slate.
That's good.
You're waiting until Friday?
You're waiting until Friday? Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, guys. I probably should.
No, man.
It's okay.
You're good, man.
That's going to make a point for Thunderdome when we get to it. But, I like this guy. And then these two show up to the, you got the gas refinery folks who, in all honesty, I am impressed they've survived as long as they did. Aren't you? Because this doesn't seem like exactly the most warrior type, though they do have a few fighters in them. What about you guys? Was it kind of? Did you believe that these guys were able to defend themselves as well as they did when we see their compound of the gas refinery? Was that believable at all?
I think eventually it is. Yeah, as the fight scenes progress, they show you how they may have fought them off, because the movie opens and pretty much they have a bunch of their fighters scatter, right? To find a rig that's big enough to move their gasoline.
Right.
So the movie kind of sets us up. I mean, when Max shows up at their place, they're short a bunch of people who are later burned in a brilliant montage. But with Brian May's score, Brian May, who is not the Brian May from Queen, but rather the Brian May who did the Freddy's Dead score, his contribution to the first two movies should not be ignored. That being said, yeah, man.
I just had a tough time in the beginning when we're first introduced to seeing, how, maybe was it maybe because the gang led by Lord Humongous, didn't want anything to happen to the refinery. Maybe that's why they went about it more.
Didn't want to damage it. Also, it's not. We see like a smattering of people, but in a sense, like as Cole was saying, there's supposed to be an army. You don't want to send an army after an army. You know that you're going to lose some of your guys.
Right.
So
I guess I had a little problem in the beginning until we meet them as the film goes on. But when you first see their compound, I'm like, why didn't these guys just storm it? They actually have the numbers.
Well, look at how they approach them. Look how they approach them. They do whatever they can, and they show it's like might, and they keep pushing them and keep pushing them and keep pushing them. And the classic monologue that the Humongous gives is, okay. There's been too much violence, too much pain. But I have an honorable compromise. Just walk away.
Yeah.
Give me your pump, the oil, the gasoline, and the whole compound, and I'll spare your lives. Just walk away, and we'll give you a safe passageway in the wastelands. Just walk away, and there will be an end to the horror. Okay, my horrible impression notwithstanding. That is, I mean, I don't want to make this into a big political thing. I know I've made little jokes here and there, but is this not kind of the behavior of a superpower against indigenous people?
Yeah.
I made a joke when somebody quoted this. I said, "Yeah, that also happens to be our foreign policy in the Middle East," And someone was like, "Oh, damn!" I'm like, "Well, it is kind of that push. I don't give a shit about you. I'll kill you if I have to. I would rather not have to go through the trouble. I just want all your stuff."
Right.
I just want all your resources. I mean,
honestly, dude, Scott, you are right on, man.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he says your pump, the oil, the gasoline, and the whole compound. He wants everything.
Yeah.
So that would explain then why he wouldn't want to destroy it, storming it, where some of his buddies, including the Rag Mohawk and his little friend on a motorcycle, who seems a little bit more wild than Humongous, which is interesting that Humongous has this. Again, it's another toe cutter syndrome, to where Humongous seems to have a grip on this gang who normally would be going batshit crazy on the compound. Wouldn't you agree? Lord Humongous is kind of like toe cutter in that sense, and that he's got control over these pretty much wild, crazy, evil people.
Where is his armor? How has he survived this long with no armor?
If you're the one in charge, the one that everybody takes orders from, the one where everybody has your back, you can go out there. You can go out there in a frickin' leather thong and be like,
and a Jason mask as well.
Man, no, he was ready. He was ready to sing "Come On, Feel the Noise," man. He was. He was
So we have our gas compound, and we have an interesting group of characters in the gas compound as well. Glenn, what did you think of the compound folks? I mean, we've got a warrior woman in there who you almost think this is where it's not Hollywood, because there's no romantic interest here. But
no, not at all.
Thank the Lord. But what do you think of this group of people that were in the compound, and the warrior woman that shows up?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think some of the portrayals of some of the people in the compound are great, and her, because I mean, she's strong, and yeah, there's not. I mean, she's all for just killing Max and taking the shit and throwing him out. So, there's not the least bit. I mean, the only actual, even a tinge of romance you get is there's two. One is with the young blonde girl and the gyro captain, which is more kind of creepy.
Yeah, it is, really.
And the other is with what is his fucking name? The Mohawk dude.
What? Yeah.
Okay, I'm looking Vernon Wells.
And his Wes. Huh? Wes. Yeah, Wes.
Yes, Vernon Wells. Good old circuitry man.
Because I mean, Wes loses it when his boyfriend gets killed.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing where Humongous has to he's like, we go in, we kill, and there's Humongous with the be still in my walk-up door. We've all lost people we love. I mean, that's so you don't get the traditional because Hollywood, it's like there's always got to be a love interest, and it's that ruins so many movies. I mean, it ruined Braveheart for me.
Well,
hey,
and there's so many.
I love, and here's some other French chick you can now fuck out.
Yeah, and there's so many where they shoehorn in the love story. And there's no, and this is what becomes a problem is that usually one of the figures of that love story, there's no other reason for them to be there.
Right.
Absolutely. You know what The Hobbit's missing? The Hobbit is missing a female character, but if we have her in there, she's got to be, something for the guys to chase after.
So it's got to be in like
it's just shoehorn someone in there because we need to have that. It's like, why? I mean,
because everyone loves an elf chick. No,
just that type of stuff. Shoehorning that stuff in. The thing is like with the Road Warrior, who's seeing this movie?
Yeah.
The primary audience is guys.
Oh, yeah.
And the secondary audience would be women who like these types of movies. And women who like these types of movies don't go because they expect some romantic involvement, where they can pretend to be the warrior woman and her beloved Max. No, that's not why people are seeing these movies. And you don't need to shoehorn that in there. And I think Miller gets that, where it's like, no, it's not necessary, it's not needed.
Yeah. All of which should not be. Glenn's totally awesome, and incidentally, I like your impressions way better than I like mine. Glenn's totally right, and it's not. It should not be just because this is very much a thing like that. It should not be noted that this film that there's any kind of anti-woman sentiment or anything like that. Like we say, that one woman does have a decent character, even though she's a supporting character, but there are good female characters in every single one of the other Mad Max movies,
right,
where their purpose is not just to serve as a love interest. And I hear that's continued on Fury Road. Again, I've been avoiding spoilers too, so I haven't checked it out.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next week. Yes, folks, just a quick plug, we will be talking Fury Road next Monday in depth, because there's some things that have come up already for those who have seen it that I can't wait to talk about. But
be there.
Be there. But I will agree, I wasn't missing it, and I'm glad there wasn't a love interest. When I first saw The Warrior Woman, I thought, when I first saw this film many moons ago, it had that feel like, oh, great, we're going to go here. But Mad Max, the most he feels, I think, towards her is respect. Wouldn't you say, Cole, towards the Warrior Woman?
Yeah, man. There's a very brief connection there. And
I mean,
everybody on Mad Max's side is killed off very quickly in that end fight sequence.
Yes.
They really are. I'm like, holy shit. I actually enjoy the tonal difference to Beyond Thunderdome, just simply for the fact that more people survive, and overall you just feel better about yourself. But they kill everybody except Mad Max and Feral Boy in that.
That are on the truck, yeah. Everybody on the truck, pretty much. Yeah.
it's the and it goes to, and this is also something that would happen with every single ripoff, is that it's basically using a spaghetti western motif. The mysterious stranger going to die. Yeah, usually by the end of those the Sergio Leone films. Man, if Clint Eastwood didn't have many friends in the beginning, he didn't have any by the end.
Well, I don't mean to sound negative, man. I mean, it's one of the best chase scenes I've ever seen, certainly.
Well, definitely. I mean, this carries over. The one thing Mad Max films always had a reputation of is for their chase scenes, especially the car scenes, and Miller really ups it in this film.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
The way that whole final scene, and we can talk about that, the way that final scene, that whole segment, like the last half of the third act is this long truck chase scene, the way that shot is just fantastic. There is so much going on in there.
And do you notice that he never uses aerial shots unless they're justified?
Yeah.
That's the beautiful thing about that end sequence is the only time you get gorgeous aerial shots are from the airplane of that specific character. So even the best shots in this film are completely justified by the natural narrative. It is such a phenomenal action movie. Oh my God. I'm sorry, I'm gushing.
No, you can gush.
Gush away, man. Gush away.
This film is so fucking perfect. Is there a more perfect film than The Road Warrior?
As far as action films, for action scenes shot, there's very few that you can make an argument for that match this. Wouldn't you say, Glenn? I mean, the action scenes in this film are just through the roof.
Yes, and I mean, the whole car chase, I mean, that is the best vehicular chase ever put to film. Ever. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Bullet. And that's an incredible car chase. This
it is
completely different. I mean, this is way beyond that. And yeah, as you said, just the aerial shots. Yeah, it's all within the narrative of the story. It's not we're going to have these grand sweeping aerial views just because they're pretty. No, it fits the story. And just especially some of the shots of the chase when he comes flying in, and you've got that zoom in on everything. It's gorgeous to watch. Absolutely gorgeous to watch.
It is like a dance, but he does that throughout this film, wouldn't you say, Scott? I mean, even the small chases. I think one of my favorite scenes, and you probably know which one I'm talking about, there's a scene from inside a car. We see a bad guy get into a car, and he's driving, and as he's driving, we see Max's truck drives up, but it's all in one shot. Like, you can see the action happening in the background, and it's just done so fluidly. Even the small shots, wouldn't you say, were just shot great? The small action scenes.
He had a way, like the first film, like I said, they had a way of just putting you right in the action. George Miller shot this stuff so well. The cinematographer Dean Semler, who for some reason, instead of doing films like Fury Road right now, photographed Paul Blart 2 this year. I couldn't believe my eyes when I read that.
But he also did Dances with Wolves, correct?
Yes.
He did. This is the guy who did Dances with Wolves. Yeah. Yes, he's a brilliant
and
cinematographer.
Both Young Guns, I believe.
Yeah, that's my point. He's a brilliant cinematographer, and he got chewed up by Sandler, but because he does a lot of their movies now. But yeah, Dean Semler did Dances with Wolves. Thank you for pointing that out, Cole. And he did this, and he's like one of these exquisite cinematographers where, I mean, basically, when I was a kid, my mom, I used to be into the Road Warrior, and I was into every single ripoff. And let's face it, all of the movies that got the post-apocalyptic films that came out, they weren't ripping off the first one; they were ripping off the Road Warrior.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
So this is the one that the one established it. This one really took off, and so everything took place in the desert. I remember I would rent these movies and I'd watch them, and my mom would say, "Oh my God, another brown film." She'd always call them brown films because everything looked brown. Everything was in the desert. Even films like Space Hunter and Metal Storm in the desert. It took her to Return of the Jedi. She's like, "Oh my God, they brown filmed this." But how do you make that look good? They managed to make it look good. It looks amazing. It looks haunting, and they put you, especially in those action sequences, like you say, they put you right in the middle of it. You don't get to see that. The only times you get to see something from a comfortable distance are when Max and the Gyro Captain are looking from a comfortable distance. Otherwise, no, you're in this with the characters.
Yeah,
and that's what makes these things so well shot, well done, is that you're part of this experience with them.
Oh, I agree, definitely. Well, even with the opening where we get to see the first batch of refinery folks get annihilated, that one scene, you're brought up close through the binoculars of the guys because it's happening in the distance, and we're put pretty much in there with when they're looking at the binoculars, and you're seeing everything that's happening, the rape and the shooting of the arrows and everything, the brutality of it. You witness it through the binoculars, so you're still experiencing it up fairly close and personal.
Yes.
Now, I want to throw this out here. Conan came out in '82. Now, Scott, tell me, the scene where Mad Max gets the just bejesus beat the shit out of him, and we have Gyro Captain coming to save him and bringing him back to the compound. Did that not feel like the Conan the Barbarian scene of the crucifixion with his buddy Jebediah, Subadai, rescuing him and bringing him back to the camp?
A little bit. You also have to remember, though, that while this, just like the original, while it came out in the rest of the world in 1981, in the United States, Road Warrior came out in '82.
Right.
So it was actually just more. It was no more than, I think, 7 months that separated these two. I think at most, because I think Conan was a Christmas release. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Merry Christmas, everybody. But it was. But honestly, I go back to a richer. Oh no! You know what? I take it back. Actually, in the United States, Road Warrior came out the week after Conan the Barbarian.
Oh wow, that had to be a great couple weeks.
1982 was freaking awesome, man. Anyway, but it's just amazing. It's like our 1939. It's incredible. But anyway, sorry. The scene. Yes, you're talking about. Sorry. I go back kind of to a richer tradition of this type of thing where the hero is beat down and everything, and then they get, nursed back to health. It's also the thing that puts the heroes or the anti-heroes' arrogance into question.
Yes.
Because all these. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to.
No.
If I don't, I'm not going to complete the thought.
No, go ahead.
Because in these things, he's always like, I'm on my own. This is me. Screw you, people. I'm out for number one, or in the case of Conan, this is something I have to do myself. And it's like, yeah, if you try to go do this yourself, you are going to get your ass kicked. And it's the other people that wind up saving you, and that's like a group effort when he winds up, at the end. I think it's a richer tradition going back to spaghetti westerns, old peplums, just even classic literature, really. About people, who try to go, they try to do everything themselves, and they wind up, you know what, sometimes you need a little help. And I do see that, I see the parallels, as you say, because both of them are, you sense, oh God, Max is dead, man. And you have that wonderful shot where he just kind of comes up and sees, Gyro Captain over him. Relax.
Yeah. Well, and
he's floating over. He probably thought he was like ascending to heaven. He's like, oh crap, I'm just in the floating.
That was a great shot, actually, of him flying over the compound. I love that shot. That's another bit of cinematography where you've got a close-up of Gibson's head as he's flying over the gang and then over the compound, and that's real. That's not CGI green screen, folks. It's all freaking hanging his head out of something while they're shooting Mel Gibson. Glenn, would you agree that scene where he gets the snot beat out of him and brought back, that's kind of our hero's wake-up call?
Oh yeah. I mean, he definitely has. I mean, he's pretty cocky.
Yeah.
Up to that point, and yeah, when he does this whole, goes away and then gets his ass kicked. Yeah, that's a bit of a wake-up call. That, well, one, it's not just that he got his ass kicked and it reduces his cockiness. It's the fact that, these people. I mean, the Gyro Captain had no reason to bring him back.
Right.
I mean, what was in it for him?
Mm-hmm.
This is a guy. Yeah, he did this thing for them, but they had a deal. They made a deal. Both sides lived up to their side of the deal. We owe Max nothing.
Right.
Why bring him back? Why nurse him back to health? There's nothing in it for us. And if anything, it's fuck him. He left us.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, we could use a good man like you. Well, I'm leaving. I got my gas. I'm gone. So yeah, I think it is a bit of a wake up for him in that it's one, it took him down a peg. Two, it showed him it doesn't matter who you are, you aren't going to make it alone in this world.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And in the entire trilogy, I think that's like one of the major points in the trilogy. And I think it's almost a little over halfway through the film too, which is kind of odd, of his turning his character back around. Wouldn't you say, Cole, that after him getting his snot beat out of him from leaving the compound and you guys are on your own, that's kind of the major turning point for his character, not only through this film, but into the next one.
Yeah, man. Very quickly, too. I mean, they run his ass over fast. I mean, it's immediate. There's no chase. They push a lever, they're up next to him, and his life is forever different.
And they ruined the car. Aww.
Yeah, they ruin the car. They kill his dog.
Yeah, you know how I feel.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh.
Those bastards. Yeah.
Yeah, doggy.
Man. Yeah, it's pretty brutal. What they corner him at, unfortunately.
And then. As we mentioned before, it's such a phenomenal chase and everything, and people die, and we lose a bunch of good guys, and we get the twist at the end, which I will say just blows your mind when you first watch this film. I think that twist at the end, and this is a spoiler room, folks. We're going to spoil it, where the tanker falls over. Mad Max is still beat. I mean, he's like the early John McClane in the amount of abuse this man takes. And what do we find, Scott? What do we find was in the tanker the whole time?
Sand.
Sand. That's right. Our best warriors and everything died for sand. How'd you feel about that twist?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I think it was like a bait and switch because they actually had gas, right? But they moved it.
Well, they moved it in the bus, and they moved it in the bus, and they moved it in all the civilian.
So they could move it safely, and he was basically the distraction,
Right.
Which is kind of a dick move, but like not like he didn't have it going in. It's like I was cool. I mean, I thought it was like I remember seeing that, and it took. I'm not kidding. When I saw this as a kid, I didn't quite get it.
Sure.
And then as you got older, you're like, damn.
And
I like his look on his face because he doesn't look like those I mean, I don't. There's always a question of whether he knew or not.
That's what I was going to ask. Do you guys feel, did Max know or not that it was full of sand?
I don't think he took it personally if he didn't know. I don't know,
Right.
honestly. But I don't think, because there's that look on his face that just kind of looked like, of course. He's like, it's like, okay, I get it.
Yes, it's definitely set up as though he didn't know. I mean, if Mad Max, if he's gonna, bow down and get down on his knees and hold out his hand and, examine the sand particles as he does, obviously he's surprised.
Yeah, sure. I don't think he took it too personally, though, honestly.
No, of course not. That's what's so brilliant about that fucking ending. It's almost like the ending to Seven in a way. It's inevitability. Like, that's the most genius plan they could have come up with, right? Sure.
It's it's almost like The Woman there, where they do have that kinship, like you guys mentioned, is like where it's kind of like that. You know what? If it was me, that's what I would have done. Sorry, Cole. Go ahead.
No, bro.
No. So, Glenn, what'd you think of that twist at the end? Did he know or not know, or?
Oh no, he didn't know.
Yeah.
I don't think he knew at all, and I mean, you can tell by the look, that kind of look on his face.
I wouldn't have been as fragile with this sort of thing.
Yeah, no, he didn't know, and it was, I mean, it was a brilliant ploy.
Yeah.
On the people's part. I mean, that was the big thing. It shows that intelligence, cunning wins out over force.
Yeah, and you find even the gyro captain isn't even that upset over it. He kind of smiles too, like, yeah, they got us.
Yeah. I mean, it also works too because it wasn't just Max on that rig. It wasn't just send out the new guy and the gyro guy and let them deal with it. They sacrificed their own people.
The leader sacrificed himself.
Yeah, knowing that they most likely weren't going to live.
Yeah. Yeah, and he and his hot rod racer knew that was a suicide mission basically, but he knew that he was letting the rest of the people get away, which, yeah, it is one of those kind of brilliant moves by the people of the refinery, and shows you, yep, no matter how good you are, you just can't trust those bastards, can you? No matter how good they are, because things are harsh in the wasteland, right, Glenn?
Yeah.
So I think, I think out of these films, for me anyway, The Road Warrior is probably the superior film, even though it's a middle film. It doesn't feel like a middle film. A lot of improvements over the first one, and this is the one that everybody equates with Mad Max, from the crazy armor to the odd souped-up vehicles. This one really set the tone not only for the rest of the series, but as I think Scott mentioned, and Cole too, and Glenn, the rip-offs.
So many rip-offs, and I loved them all.
They're great, but I mean, yeah, and Mad Max even ripped off a few things off of other previous films, but a lot of films duplicated Mad Max look, from the leather to the crazy guys to the vehicles.
It started its own subgenre. I mean, that shows influence right there. There's only really a handful of movies every decade where you can say, yeah, they made this movie and they actually established an entire new set of movies that were based on it. Conan did it. This movie did it. Blade. Well, no, not really Blade Runner, because that didn't become a hit till later. But I'd say maybe the Warriors did it. Only like a handful that have done that. I do want to mention really quick, by the way, that I was looking through here to see some stuff. I think I was looking at something else that you guys were talking about, and it does say that for you, Mark, that the opening narration was not in the Australian release of the film.
Oh, it wasn't.
Which is, of course, where this film was based.
Right.
So.
Okay, so it was added for the global audience.
I still like it, and I
Yeah.
still go by. I still agree with Cole on it,
So
but I guess Max was a homegrown hero. They didn't really feel like they needed it in the native version.
just to sum up with, do we all agree that Road Warrior was the best out of the series so far? Because we haven't seen
Oh
Fury
yeah,
Road,
yeah.
but yeah, and I think we're all in agreement. This really is just not just a great one in the series, but a great action film in general.
Yeah, man.
It doesn't have your it does have a few, but not nearly the tropes that you would expect from a film like this, because there were so many knockoffs that actually had those tropes in there. This one definitely it stands out, and if you are a fan of action films at all, not just forget Mel Gibson outside of whatever his personal crap is, see this film. I think at least just if you're an action film fan, if you haven't, and arm yourself with knowledge before you go see Mad Max Fury Road. Just see this one, if nothing else, at least, to give you
Yeah.
the true feel of Mad Max in general and what they're probably going for in the latest film. Now we move on to our the last film, The Thunderdome, which Jill, my wife Jill, the wife, she pokes fun at me because I can't ever say Thunderdome without trying to sound like Tina Turner, because
Mark, can't we just get beyond Thunderdome? I had to say it.
you did.
Mystery
No,
Science Theater 3000 fans know I had to say it.
of course you had to say it. Now, Thunderdome. Okay, so we have Thunderdome, which the third one in the trilogy, and probably the most Hollywood of the films,
Eh.
maybe out of all of them. Now George Miller was involved in this one, but from what I've read up on, because I did want to do a little bit of more reading on it, his friend and producer that worked with him on the first two ended up dying just before this film, during pre-production, didn't he, in a helicopter accident? And
Yeah.
so George Miller really was only involved in this as far as the action scenes go, and everything else in the film he left to George Ogilvy.
I always wondered why that was the case. I didn't
Yeah,
know.
I read that. I believe it's trivia even on IMDb that, yeah, his producer or his friend ended up dying in an accident just during pre-production, and
Oh,
so
look at that.
George,
Byron Kennedy, according to the IMDb.
yep, and George kind of took a step back from the project and let him, let George handle everything else except a couple of the action scenes, which you can kind of tell because this does have a bit of a different feel to it from the first two, for sure. First off, we've got a bigger budget, a bigger crew, but this takes an odd turn to where we're going to start off right away. It opens with a film, and we see a character that we saw in the first one. Well, not a character, an actor, Bruce Spence. But he plays a completely different character, or at least a character that doesn't know Mel Gibson.
Yeah, I'd say it's not completely different because they're almost identical characters.
They
In a
are.
lot of ways, where it's like, it's like if you, I was just reading something online where it's like someone said if you set them down and had the two characters talk to each other, it'd be Gyro Captain and Jedediah going. He goes, well, I like to hide and then steal people's stuff when they're not looking. Hey, I do that too. I like to say something funny when I steal people's stuff. I do that too. I like to fly things. Hey, so do I. I mean, there's so much identical between them, but George Miller himself has said they are different people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a mistake. It was. I mean, I actually really like this movie a lot, but I was right with Cole here. The first time I saw this movie, I'm like, the first time you see him, of course, because you see the first thing you see is you see the plane knocking Max down, who's now like this is the raggedy man. He's walking through the desert. The sands have like swept over the roads and stuff. So he's just got like a camel or something.
Yeah.
And
in a wagon.
and you see he's flying. He's in like a plane, and he knocks these guys over. It's like, oh my god, like, dude, why is Gyro Captain being such a dick? Is it because he's got a kid now and he feels like I should be a dick for my kid? That's not a nice thing for a dad to do. And yeah, I thought, honestly, it took me, I don't even know if I got it the first time I saw it. Remember, I saw this movie when I was like 10 years old when it came out. I don't even know if I got it the first time I saw it, but it's like, oh, they are different people. That was, and they recast certain characters. As we mentioned, one of the guys from Mad Max is going to show up in Fury Road as a different character, we think.
Yeah. Not sure.
And stuff, but
that threw me off.
But the characters were so similar.
Yeah.
That it's like, I get you like Bruce Spence. And, I've seen lots of sequels where the same actor shows up in a different role. But the characters were so similar, like, they should have put Bruce Spence in a different part.
Yeah.
And put somebody else in the part. It's one of the few mistakes I think the film makes.
Yeah. And for those of you not familiar with Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, we follow Mad Max now. We catch him. He's pretty much a nomad, but he ends up coming across Barter Town, and it's a desert town where they've got the Thunderdome where disputes are handled, and when he's banished from Barter Town, he ends up meeting up with a tribe of children, and he ends up setting out to trying to save
Walker.
Yes, to save the children of the apocalypse, which has been established now of why things are the way they are. The first thing that threw me off to at the beginning was having the same character, and it sounds like the rest of you. Glenn, what about you? Did that throw you off?
Oh, absolutely. When I first saw it, I'm like, oh, hey, it's the Gyro Captain again.
And he's being a dick. What the hell?
He's being a dick. And I'm like, I mean, really? You don't recognize the guy? I mean, come on, man. I mean, yeah, his hair's longer, but
and he's got a second stripe now.
Yeah, he does have the second stripe. But
did you notice that he has the second white stripe now?
Yep.
In the film, and I was like, that can't be coincidence.
I wonder what he's going to have in Fury Road. Is he going to have an even 3 or like?
Well, according to the one poster I saw, it looks like he shaved his head, so he took care of that whole white streak problem. But we have our hero Mad Max getting to Barter Town, and wow, Barter Town, you can tell civilization's really taken a dive since the first and even the second one. What do you guys think of Barter Town and how the characters that they had in it? Now, I mean, this film came out in '85, and we've had our rip-off films before. It almost felt like they were pulling from some of those rip-off films, didn't it?
Certainly, in the sense that water is now the scarce item instead of gasoline, because in a lot of those Italian rip-off films, like say Exterminators of the Year 3000, which is one of my favorites, is water is the thing that they're all searching for. I'm like, oh, they're searching for water in this one too. Okay, I guess it makes sense, but yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Bartertown is just a great thing though, because it's the last civilization, but it's almost like it does have a civilization to it. It does have a system of government to it, which, like all other systems of government, again, I get like this, I'm sorry, this is the way the films are made up, guys, which, like all other systems, are made up of people who have to work in the filth and the shit all day long.
literally the shit, because the town is run on pig shit.
Yeah. Methane cometh from pig shit, yes.
Which I got to admit, I like that. Did you like that part, Glenn, to where we've abandoned gas now, the fuel, and we've gone to methane, pig shit?
Well, I don't think they have abandoned it. It's the fact that you can't get gas.
Well, you can't get it. Right?
You can't drill. Yeah.
But I mean, and the whole concept of Bartertown. I mean, trying to remember who run Bartertown.
Master Blaster.
The Master Blaster.
No, yeah, I mean, and again, that's showing ingenuity, cleverness.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have. You can't go to the Exxon, down the street, or the Clark, or let me pick it. I guess it still exists. the speedway down the street and get some gas. So what do? I mean, you still want to power stuff. You want to have electricity. You want to, do all this stuff that you want to do. You want to power your vehicles. Well, how do you do if you don't have gas? You make a different type of fuel.
Right. And that they did with Master Blaster, who ended up being the model of any video game villain from then on out. Major boss with the little guy on the back of a big guy.
That doesn't pop up in Borderlands at all.
No.
Of course, it does beg the question of that, as we pointed out, they're searching for water. Those pigs gotta drink a lot of fucking water.
That or they fed them human blood.
Cole, you still need water, man.
That's true. Cole, what'd you think of Bartertown that we run into, and how they had things set up there?
Oh man, it was beautifully filmed. Really gorgeous long shots and some great performances.
A whole lot of different characters too that we see that don't even get full focus. It kind of had that Mos Eisley feel to it, didn't it?
Yeah, man. I love Bartertown as a character. I think it's great, man.
And here we get to another part outside of Pence being a completely different person. We have Tina Turner in here for some reason.
No, I'm going to disagree with you on that. She's great in this movie.
Okay. Go ahead, Scott.
I was going to let you have your say.
No, go ahead, make your case.
I had to say, this is a wonderful character. Auntie Entity is a wonderful character because of how she describes of where she came from. You got to wonder who this person was. I mean, maybe she was like somebody who was like working in some like dive restaurant, or maybe it was worse. Maybe she was like some hooker on the street. They basically leave the impression that she was at best a nobody and at worst worse than a nobody. And until the day after, I was the one left alive, and she built this place up, and she has become kind of the figurehead of this place and rules it as best she knows how, as ferociously and with an iron fist as she can, completely with this iron fist, all the while knowing and resenting that she's not the real person in charge. She's still not in charge.
Sure.
She's still got people that can order her around, and she's so pissed off about that. Tina, I don't think she did any acting roles after this. Of course, she had done like Tommy beforehand and stuff, which is not really a acting role. It was more of a performance.
I was going to say, I didn't have problems with her character. It was just the casting. I
thought she was good. I thought she was good. This is somebody, I think she could. I always assumed that she drew upon that. I mean, let's face it. This is like when shortly after she had her big comeback in the 80s, where she was nothing after she left Ike. After she left Ike Turner, she's done. Then she's like, come on, she came back from one of the most publicly abusive relationships in history, and now we have this character who came back from nothing and started.
Sure.
I knew she drew on that. I think she did a great job. And what's the only thing that gets her to where you're like, she's not a villain, where she's not a complete villain? It's when she sees the children.
Yeah.
What do you think she lost? What do you think she never got a chance to have that she wanted? Oh yeah, I love this character, and I love the way she does it. It's Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome is a great movie. I still think it's a fantastic movie. It's of course the most problematic of the series. I honestly want. And I get into, people get on my case for this too. I always say, one of my favorite parts of the movie is Tina Turner. She's great in this movie, and I love the character that George Miller wrote for her, and I love the character that she portrays.
Oh, Glenn, what about you? You liked the character? Do you think Tina Turner was a decent pick for it? I know I'm probably going to be in the minority in this, so go ahead.
No, I think she did a fine job. The problem is I think it's Tina Turner as a person, I think, is almost too iconic to be interpreted as anyone other than Tina Turner.
Yeah.
And I think she did a fine job. It's the fact that I can't watch this movie and not remove the fact that that's Tina Turner.
Right. I see, and that's my thing.
That's all it is. That's Tina Turner. I mean, yes, I know Max is Mel Gibson. But when I watch the movie, that's Max.
Right.
That's not Mel Gibson. That's Max. This is that's Tina Turner.
Yeah. I can see that. See that. I do see somebody else, but I can see how that would be a problem. Like, just like whenever, like, say, like John Lennon made one of his very few film appearances, or Bob Dylan was in the Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid
or Kevin Costner in absolutely anything he does.
Yeah, Kevin Costner, anything he does, Kevin Costner. Yeah, I think that's what it is for me. She was at that time, she was such an icon to begin with. To see her, and she was such her performance and everything. The Tina Turner. We saw the performer outside of Thunderdome was so iconic to begin with that seeing her as anything else, that's you nailed it, Glenn. For me, that was the issue I had, was that I didn't see her anything but Tina Turner. What about you, Cole? Tina Turner, decent. I mean, the character was great. Don't get me wrong, and she did play it well. But did you see her as anything other than Tina Turner?
Man, you got me cornered. It's hard to offer a decent criticism, you know.
Right. No, I
would say. I mean, when did this come out? 1986.
85.
Yeah, July 10th, 1985.
Yeah, so I was 6, 7 years old.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's pretty extreme, but. Yeah. On the other hand, this is the first Mad Max movie that's financed via American, right?
Right, which explains probably why the casting was there.
In fact, I believe Maurice Jarre, who replaced the brilliant Brian May, had an original score composed for those opening credits, which now are a pretty cheesy song. I mean, yeah. To criticize Tina Turner's involvement is pretty extensive, you know, but fucking A, it's a great film.
Like you said, I had no problems with her in the film. I just had a problem seeing her other than Tina Turner in it. I love the character.
I'm sure it was stunt casting. I mean, and bringing up the music is a wonderful thing because it has One of the Living and Beyond Thunder and We Don't Need Another Hero in the end credits, which is a great song, but still, none of the other movies had pop songs.
What would it be without her? I guess is
I can see them casting somebody else and stuff. I'm sure it was stunt casting. I like what she brought to the performance, though, because I love the character, and I thought that I always felt that she brought a lot of her own self to the part, and that's why I liked it. But I mean, I can see both sides of it, and I've had this argument with people before, because I mean, there have been times when I've been like the only one, like, man, Tina Turner was awesome. Like, what? Fuck yeah! They want to like throw beer bottles at me at that point.
I'm not saying she was. Like I said, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying she was bad in the film at all. I think just the casting of her for me took it out of it because I saw her. I imagined that she was a pop star. This is Tina Turner. She survived, and she became the leader of Thunderdome. I didn't. I guess I had a little problems with the character because she did seem like she wove a lot of at least some of herself into that character. And again, I also felt like it was stunt casting, which I sometimes have an issue with, that someone's cast in a role just because they're at that time a bigger person or on their way up, whether or not they were actually meant to be in that role. So our Thunderdome itself now, it's an interesting thing because we've got our Mad Max character who ends up meeting up with Entity, who is playing him and has him, oh yeah, you want to take out the Master Blaster, which To this day, I can't get over that name. But of course, we had Humongous and Toe Cutter previously. So, and Master is the midget, and Blaster is the big, huge guy that Master rides. And so Mel Gibson eventually gets him into the Thunderdome by challenging him because they took his car, which was pulled by camels. What about that fight scene within the Thunderdome? I thought that was pretty wild, and it felt at the time a bit original. Was that original at all in how they resolved their issues? Glenn, what'd you think of that Thunderdome battle?
Oh, absolutely. I love the Thunderdome stuff, and it harkens back. I mean, it's like, I mean, it keeps the masses pacified. Mm-hmm. It's like the gladiatorial combat, in ancient Rome. The people don't have TV to watch. They probably, those who can even read books, probably don't have books to read.
Right.
So you need something. One, it solves a problem. You have people have a dispute. Here's a problem to solve it. Two, it gives the people something to watch, as well as a bit of a discouragement from engaging in specific types of behavior. Especially, now well, okay, I'm not going to, really do a lot of crazy shit against the people who run this place, because you're going to fight against, little, sassy, chip on a shoulder short guy there who can live through anything. Yeah. Or you're gonna fight the giant, mentally disabled. Well, you don't know he's mentally disabled. So just the giant guy in the huge helmet. It's like your options there are not very good for going up against the system.
Right.
And then it comes down to the, if I'm going to do something, one, could I get away with it? Two, could I kill the person I'm doing it to if I get caught?
Right.
And it's so it serves a lot of purposes, and it fits with this society, I think, and it fits in the theme of the film.
Mm-hmm. What did you think of the way that Thunderdome battle, the way it was handled, and the idea of Thunderdome, Cole?
Amazing! I love that sequence, man. I mean, you finish off the first third of the film with the best action sequence.
Yeah, right?
I haven't done much research, obviously, for reasons I've listed prior, sure, because I don't want spoilers, but shit, man. I imagine there was a certain backlash because there wasn't, as much car action in this film. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah,
I don't know.
There is a lacking. There
weren't as many cars.
No.
Yeah. And I like that about this film, man. I really do. I like that you almost get the impression when he gets behind the wheel at the end of the very third act, like, oh shit, there's gonna be some damage, and it's not that at all. He jumps off the car as quick as he got on it. I don't know. I just like this film for its structure, mainly.
Yeah, it is definitely a different. It is a departure from the other two of what we had seen.
Yeah,
it is. Now I want to get to. I know it's getting late, but I want to get to a few other points with this film. One of them is now we have a reason, because after he's banished, which is just a wild thing dealing with the wheel of fate, which I thought was just another level to this society that they had. He gets banished and he finds this tribe of kids who we're not quite sure how they all came together. They've either been banished or were drifting or lost. And they get the whole painting of the caves, and they got their own language, and we've come to find out there were nukes. Mm-hmm. And for me, I guess I had a problem with that, because the other two films, I never got the impression there were nukes. And in here, we've got radiation. I mean, we got an earlier scene where he's testing water to make sure it's not radioactive. Was it intended all along, did you feel? I mean, like I said, I read that George Miller initially intended it for just be the downfall of civilization, but did that take a little bit away and felt a little cliche, the fact that it was nukes, apparently, that eventually brought us to where everybody was in the world, Cole?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was much different, and it certainly comes out of left field.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, Mark, like the one trailer I've seen for the fourth film has water shortage fears,
Right.
right? So I don't know. I think maybe they're just making minor adjustments from generation to generation. Is that too generous? I don't know. I kind of feel that way about it.
I mean, because we are talking 1985 now, so we've had the nuclear apocalypse film before.
Yeah,
And
but you know what? All the whole nuclear apocalypse thing. I mean, they don't even call it an apocalypse. It's
Poxyclips.
Poxyclips.
Poxyclips,
And he doesn't even really buy their version of it. In fact, that is a great pivotal moment of this film. I love this point of this film where you get to hear Mad Max actually talk about the apocalypse on some level. You know, you actually get him to hear him kind of on some level verbalize, oh fuck, okay. This is how I feel about it. It's like road rash. Okay? You know, there is no future. What we have is right here. That's all wonderful. I think that's great. What was the question? I'm so sorry.
You drifted. No, I guess my question was just that making it a nuclear fallout.
The nuclear thing, yeah. You're right. It specifies it in a way that was not there. Even in the last film, it wasn't there. On the other hand, oh man, you know, it's like a generational transition, right? You've got these kids who are sort of passing the story along, and that language is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe your enjoyment of the film depends on how much you buy their society, you know, and consequently, you get to see Mel Gibson full-fledgedly punch a young woman in the face and knock her out.
Right.
Which is incredible considering if you go back, you know, fans of film in general, not Mel Gibson fans, but just fans of film should check out Payback, the cut. They call it the straight-up cut, but it's really just Brian Halligan's film. And there's an initial scene in there where Mel Gibson shows up and punches a woman straight in the face, which they cut out. I think it's a great sort of tale for this Brennick, who's been stuck on the road, and now he's not on the road anymore. He's sort of robbed of everything, and this character who robs him is not from the Road Warrior, you guys are saying?
No, it's same actor, different character.
Same actor, different character.
Is that how am I supposed to respond to that as a fan? That's crazy.
It is crazy on that. Did giving it the nuclear trope, Glenn, take something away? Do you think? Or was it maybe assumed by a lot of people because it was never taught and that was the state of the culture at the time? I mean, many of us kids of the 80s know that nuclear fear. Was that maybe assumed? Was it assumed, do you think?
It's just assumed that, you know, if the world's going to end, it's going to end in, you know, nuclear fire. That's what's going to happen. I mean, there was always the part of me, I remember watching this and going, like, why would anyone fucking nuke Australia? I mean, not saying like Australia's worthless, but I mean, like, you know, it's like, I mean, obviously, like the U.S. wouldn't, you know.
Right. So
I mean, like, is Russia just like, well, fuck it, if we're going down, we're just taking everyone apart with us? Because I don't think Australia is nuclear capable.
Yeah.
I mean, I could be wrong, but
I'm not sure either. But
that's the thing. Like these, you know, it's like everywhere gets nuked. I'm like, really? Like, what did Papua New Guinea do? No, you know, like in places like you know, what's Madagascar, or you know, some of these places, but. It's just that was always the thing in the 80s. If the apocalypse was going to happen, you know, well, of course, nuclear war.
Right.
It won't be aliens because we'll have blown ourselves up before the aliens get here. We already know this.
So I guess that took away for me because it had been a trope by 1985 for me. Scott, what about you? I mean, I know you love the film, but did that still seem like an easy explanation?
By that point, and in certain ways, it's one of the things that you have against it, because it was such a popular trope that I just didn't really even care that they had done it. First of all, we're already dealing with lots of suspensions of disbelief. What's going to happen when nuclear bombs go off? Does that mean like everybody's like going to start behaving like a punk rocker and driving around? No, it means we're not going to be here, and the people that are left are probably going to die slowly of radiation poisoning. But Glenn brings up an interesting point. Is that it could be the nuclear bombs that happened in other nations and just kind of effects like swept. But anyway, I never even thought about that before he started talking about that. But I didn't mind it because I'd seen it had become a thing, and as I've mentioned, I can't remember what other episode of the show I mentioned it on, and you talked about it a little bit. Dude, the fear of the inevitability, the seeming inevitability that we are going to blow ourselves up with nuclear bombs, it was so all-encompassing that most of us could just thought, is it going to be in my lifetime? It might be. But if it happens, it's just a matter of time. So to me, it didn't really matter that it wasn't, whether it is or it isn't. When I watch this again, I'll have to keep that in mind, think maybe it wasn't really. Who knows? Or because we know that bit was added on in the Road Warrior.
Right.
But honestly, I at this point I didn't mind. I mean, the kids are what most people had problems with in the movie.
Well, because I mean, they don't really go into because the kids don't explain it the best of how they formed their tribe. And if you look at the male to female ratio and who is getting older and younger, it starts to get that little creepy feeling of that whole group going, how long have these kids been out here?
Is that why there's one guy who can't do anything but yank on that Bugs Bunny chain
I mean, it was. I can see why, and that's what I never quite understood the tribe. How they came together. I kind of, after watching it this time around for the episode, I kind of had to piece together that maybe some of these are people that were drifting and vagabonds and left orphans and such. Because I'm like, otherwise you're really getting into some really weird connotations with this tribe of kids who are talking about Walker and damn kids and their technology. Let me tell you, what was interesting about that whole kid tribe thing is, do you think that Tina Turner's group, they didn't know about them out there, did they?
No.
Which makes me wonder, those kids, how did they truly survive? I mean, they had water, but if there's radiation, did you really want to drink it? I mean, there's a lot of questions with that tribe, and I guess that's how did you feel about that kid tribe in general, as far as just them being there? That suspension of disbelief, I guess, for me was hard to look past, but it sounds like it is easier for at least Cole and Scott to look past this group, or there had to have been questions.
Are we talking about realistic, post-apocalyptic environments?
Well, the film's up to that point, though. I mean, it just is a great departure. It's a huge departure from the setup of the rest of the two films. So,
yeah. Well, I think part of it stems from the fact that you had two directors. Because, I mean, George Miller, pretty much, he was only involved in the action scenes.
Right.
And, Ogilvy?
Yeah, had the rest.
Did everything else. And I think that shows is that you had two different people's visions in this film. And I think that might attribute to some stuff with the kids. Now, as far as it taking me out of, I didn't find it believable. I just didn't like it because I hate children, and children are. That's not entirely true. I hate children in movies mostly.
Because you find them annoying, yes.
Yes. God, some kids in some movies. Now these ones weren't super annoying.
Right.
They're not like the fucking kid in what is that fucking movie with I can't remember it now. This horrible movie where this guy's going to become the new Elvis out in
3,000 miles. 3,000 miles to Graceland, or
no.
Six String Samurai.
Six String Samurai. That kid and that. That's all he says, like the whole movie, just over and over again. And too many kids in movies are like that. They're either super annoying or they're there solely as some kind of comic relief, and I hate that crap. The kids in here weren't bad. I mean, I think it's kind of there's some interesting bits to it. As far as them having survived where they are, I attribute that up to the water source that where they are. It's obviously a freshwater spring that comes from water deep underground, which is constantly flowing, which is why that water isn't killing them and turning them into horrible mutants, which would have been even better. Just giant mutants for Max to fight. Captain Walker could have been some giant robot or something.
Oh man, I would have loved to see those kids' reaction, or Max's reaction, if he got woken up by a bunch of mutants.
Well, if he got woken up by some chuds or something. But I think maybe it's also they definitely took a much lighter tone with this movie.
Right.
There's so much more comedy in this.
Yeah, there really is, man.
Yeah. I did make a note of that too, that it was a lot lighter than the other one.
Well.
Oh yeah, I mean, the whole character of Iron Bar.
Yeah.
The little guy. That's all comedy, and the mechanic guy. All these so many of these characters are comedic. And then you got the kids in here, which gives definitely a softer feel because, the only kid we had in the first one gets run by motorcycle guys. And the second one, it's a feral kid that throws boomerangs around that chops off people's hands. So definitely they went somewhere much lighter. And I don't know if it's kind of where, in Road Warrior you get at least for some of the people, they get the happy ending. They go off to their, to the bright shining sea and they become the Great Northern Tribe. And this is kind of more of that, there's hope for the future type of thing.
Right.
Because they're still kids, and, kids are, our future. If you teach them well, you can let them lead the way. And,
wow,
and
you went there.
I went there. So, I see that, there's actually I guess, for lack of a better term, a touching scene. Actually, a couple scenes that were cut from the film. One being Max dreaming about his family and crying. And they cut that. We're like, we can't have Max cry. And there's also one where one of the kids, Gecko, he's dying, and Max takes him and shows him the lights of Bartertown. And as Gecko's dying, he says, "There's Tomorrowland, you made it."
Oh.
And it shows in that scene, more so than the Max crying one, I think shows the fact that Max is not completely hollowed out inside.
Right. Well, he's kind of trying to bring him back on the road to being human. I'm sorry, Cole, I did cut you off there before. I apologize. Did the kids bring up questions for you, though? I mean, they had to bring up something, didn't they?
Yeah, man. They did. Although I get so wrapped up in the story. If we're talking about Beyond Thunderdome specifically, I get really wrapped up in that story and the way it's musically told. And one thing I wanted to mention was all these films are kind of musicals, and The first film to a lesser degree, but Road Warrior specifically is nothing without Brian May's score.
Right.
And Maurice Jarre, and I know I'm not pronouncing that right. My apologies, but
that's how we all pronounce it. No worries.
there is a correct pronunciation for that.
Yeah.
But he did the score for this, and it's equally as good, for sure. But this film is a musical as well. It uses almost vocal tonnage and almost vocal elasticity to tell a story, right down to what's the tool they give him where the 3D glasses. I had
the Viewmaster.
The Viewmaster.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. I'm limiting myself there as a human being, but I was around for that era. All that stuff I think works great. And not only that, but Mad Max, during the course of the storyline, follows these wayward teenagers right to the heart of Bartertown, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he gives them so many second chances. This is a good movie. I really love Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome.
Oh.
I probably got lost in my description, but
it's okay.
I enjoy this film quite a bit.
It's okay. It's getting late. I've kept you guys pretty long on this, but
I just wanted to really say though, like that the kids, I think a lot of the people got really mad at the kids in this movie, as well as the idea that the movie was PG-13 instead of R.
Yes.
That was a big deal when it came out. I was freaking out. I was like, oh boy, it's PG-13. I was happy because that meant I could go see it, because I was 10 years old. But, but I know like a lot of people are like, oh man, the hard edge is going to be gone from it. And it kind of is. It's a softer edge. And I think a lot of people rolled their eyes when the kids came out, because how many films have we seen where kids just ruin the damn movie? Glenn's absolutely right. It's like, so you kind of like, when they come in, you're like, oh, here we go. This one, yeah, there's a few kids where you just want to be like, there's one kid gets swallowed up and you're like, good. But there's some kids who annoy you in this, but really, I like, you look at it as an adult, I like the indigenous society that they created. According to all the trivia, it was originally this wasn't originally a Mad Max film. It was originally about these kids. Yeah, and they turned it into one.
Because George Miller just dropped in. I guess they had the idea, and George Miller happened to just make an off-the-cuff message of, well, what if it's Max who discovers them? And that's what spawned it to be a Mad Max film, from what I read.
Yeah, and I actually like the kids. There's certainly, I can see where it's kind of a betrayal to some of the people who want a more hard-edged movie. But I think it's also important to show that Max completing that arc. He started this series as not just a husband, but as a new father.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the kids where, some of these kids might be around the age of that his son might have been.
Yeah, it's true.
And I kind of see it that the series is about Max losing and then regaining his humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you get here, and I think that the kids are kind of essential to that. And you see that paralleled in Auntie as well. When she sees the kids, she's like, oh shit, I'm bad, I'm not that bad.
Yeah.
Then
we do get a chase scene at the end with the train, which there's still tracks, apparently. Those don't get covered with sand. And the cow car, which, out of all the cars in all of Mad Maxdom, I love the cow racing car.
Did you ever look at that and think, how many cows did they have to stitch together?
Folks, there's a racing car in here that's completely covered in cowhide, run by a guy, no shit, in a cowboy hat. Go figure. And Mad Max uses that car at one point. And so we do get a Mad Maxian chase at the end. And you're right, he does come full circle, and if you really want to get deep, especially near as we get that coda at the end. The coda at the end, he becomes a dad once again to society, to a new society by saving the kids who fly away in the not the gyro captain's plane. And so we get that scene at the end. And what do you think about how they had Mama? It was almost like the ending of the second one, wasn't it? With the sand. Only this time it was Entity instead of Max who smiled at what had happened. Did you get that certain similar vibe of the ending to where she let it go because it was like, okay, you got me? Was that a similar feel for you guys?
Yeah, for me it was. I definitely had the kind of feel that this was that was kind of a nod to the Road Warrior.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't kill Max at the end. He's wiped out. I mean, he's destroyed her town, and he's wiped out most of her guys. And the cow car, sad tear. The cow car died, and yet at the end, she smiles.
Cow car is hamburger. Sorry.
she smiles and drives away, similar to the way the end of Road Warrior was. And go ahead, Scott.
I think she sees a kindred spirit there. And he's a survivor. She's going to be fine. When she says we will rebuild, I truly believe that. Yeah, sure. She's going to rebuild Bartertown, and she's going to be okay. And I think she sees a kindred spirit there. Much like, I was just talking about, Max, like how he would say, like, yeah, I'd do that. From Road Warrior, is that. And she even says it well, and a great last line. Again, I love this performance. I don't care what you say. Ain't we a pair, Raggedy Man? I'm like, oh, what a great line. It's like, it's like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna survive. You're gonna survive. Let's just not hang out.
So I think we'll wrap it up here. I've kept you guys really late. Thank you for staying up. I think we all agree that this is definitely an interesting trilogy. I never thought in my day that I would see another Mad Max film coming to the big screen. And I'm just let's just throw out real quick, and then we can pip our stuff. We will be doing a Fury Road show next week. Let's do a little bit of prediction now. I've tried to avoid all the reviews I can with it. What I want out of Fury Road is some badass chase scenes, which it looks like we get, and Mad Max being our quiet hero again. And it looks like we may get that as well. And I just want an entertaining, good time that feels a lot like the Road Warrior, which from the trailer it almost feels like it. And that's all I asked for from Fury Road, but I think I'm going to enjoy it. Not sure I get to see it this weekend. Scott, what about you? What do you look for in Fury Road, and do you think you're going to enjoy it?
Not a lot of preconceptions. I would, because I'm not expecting another Mad Max movie like the ones we've had. I don't think George Miller is the type of director who goes backwards.
Okay.
I think whatever he has come up with will be some kind of new spin on the material. Again, I've avoided stuff too.
Sure.
As long as it's one of those, it's a film like that, like the others, really makes you feel, gives you that adrenaline rush and emotional rush of being right there in the action, the crazy manicness, like those nutty Australians we know they are, like how you see that. Oh, what a lovely day! Yeah. As long as they put us right in there and really make you feel that, no other preconceptions, man. That's all I want. I want to see. It's been 30 years. I'm so happy he's done another one. I'm not expecting a film that takes me back to when I was 8 or 10. I want to see where are you taking us next.
Sure.
And that's it.
What about you, Glenn? Any expectations in Fury Road, or you just hope it's an entertaining film?
Well, I'm expecting to go in seeing the apparently full-blown feminist propaganda that is this film by daring to have a strong female character in it. No, my expectation is a 2-hour car chase. That's my expectation.
Yes.
And I mean, I've read a little bit about some of the stuff that some criticism some people have had without having seen the movie. I'm like, great, you're okay, and why it's awful. Now, I mean, I can accept criticism of why someone might think a movie will be bad, like say it has Keanu Reeves in it. Well, I don't trust him as an actor to be playing, Lord Dumblefart of, Exington Manor, a British noble. Okay, fine. But this, I have high expectations for it. I trust George Miller to do it right. From
Sure.
what I have seen, it looks pretty intense.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that has me the most psyched is that CG in this film is used to enhance the practical effects, not in place of practical effects.
Part of the reason why it's taken so long to get to screen, from what I understand. So
yes, I mean, and that's me. Some things can only be done with CG.
Right.
But so many things that are done with CG they don't need to be. You don't need the CG cars. We have those already.
Lots of them to spare.
Yes, so that is the thing that has to be the most exciting, is that I'm going to see a lot of practical effects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has me excited too, the practical effects side of it, when I heard that like 85-90% of the film is practical effects. And if you've seen just one trailer, you're going, holy crap, most of that's practical? You're kidding me. Oh boy, I'm excited. Cole, what about you? Just any expectations at all for Fury Road, or what you'd like to see?
Man, brother, I'm super excited. Thanks for having me on the show tonight. My opinion of Fury Road is high. Wait for it to come out. Our good friend Glenn did a review of Guardians of the Galaxy, and I won't recapsulate that word for word here, but his opinion of Guardians of the Galaxy was pretty much my opinion of Road Warrior, which is,
sure.
Man, if you've got a hard-on that can reach the moon, this is it. I love Glenn for that review. I'll never forget that review. And I feel that way about Road Warrior, man. Road Warrior is, Mark, you're one of the few people who've seen my movies.
Yeah.
And I think Road Warrior is all over Little Riding Hood in a way.
It is.
The sense of desolation and hopelessness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all I can say is I'm amped, man. I'm amped for George Miller's next project. I'm amped for seeing fucking Tom Hardy as Rockatansky. Mm-hmm. What a great choice, and I'm excited. I don't know what to say. I'm excited. I'm not being very professional. I apologize.
No, that's not professional. That's just like me. I saw that trailer. First time I saw the Fury Road trailer, I had no more misconceptions or any worries about the film when I saw how they did the trailer, because that trailer was nothing like any other modern movie trailer you see. This is what I look for in this, is an action film that isn't like the action films we've had, which have been a lot of comic book based ones. Just looking for something completely out there, original, someone who says, thank you, Mr. Producer, for giving me all this money. I'm going to make the film I want to make. And that's what it feels like. And I know there's some people out there, especially from the younger crowd, who have already seen Fury Road, who didn't care for it. And we may even have a couple of those on our show next week. I look forward to having you guys there as well, talking Fury Road. Real quick, let's just run down quick. Cole, where can they find you at, sir?
We can find me on Facebook. Please stop by if you want to talk movies. Cole Meredith is my name. Horror Roar is my horror tribute page, but Shadows and Lovers Productions is where you can find out about my original projects, of which there are many coming out. But
awesome.
Let's support independent movies, man. Let's rock it, seriously.
Yes, because Mad Max was actually one of those.
Yes. Yeah.
Glenn, what about you, sir? Where can they find you at?
You can find me on Facebook, both just as me and also with the B-Movie Bunker. You can find me on YouTube, Naked Hobo Productions, the B-Movie Bunker, and on Twitter, @Naked Hobo, all one word.
Yeah, and finally, Scott, go ahead, sir.
You can find me at movieocrity.com. That's where all my stuff is. I'm on Twitter as Movieocrity, and I'm on Facebook as Movieocrity and me. And also you can, if you want to catch up, you can catch my web series Movieocrity on Vimeo. It's on YouTube as well, but not all the episodes are there because YouTube sucks that way. I'm working on more if I could get my damn program to work. So, but I've been trying. So, yeah. But movieocrity.com is the main place.
Awesome. So, folks, we will have this up before we do our Fury Road discussion. Please tune in back when we give you our take. You've heard what we've predicted, and it'll be interesting to see what our take is after we've seen it. Tune in next week. You can find all our stuff on iTunes and Stitcher Smart Radio. Go to specialmarkproductions.com for links to these brilliant and very patient people who have been kind enough to join me tonight to discuss this very interesting trilogy. Look forward to seeing the next one. Go to specialmarkproductions.com for our archived episodes as well as the reviews I do for We Live Film and all that other stuff that I end up doing. So thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you've enjoyed this super long discussion on this trilogy. And remember, with the spoiler room, the conversation is fresh, but those movies, boy, do we spoil them.